elect our country to serve as non-permanent member of the Security Council for the 2026-2027 term. On behalf of the President of the Republic, His Excellency Félix Antoine Tshisekedi Chilombo, and in the name of the Congolese people, I wish to express our deep and sincere gratitude to all member states that supported our candidacy. We also wish to pay tribute to the African Union, the unwavering support of our continental organization, and the solidarity of all its member states have been instrumental. This election is not only a mark of confidence in the DRC, it is also a reflection of Africa's unity and its rightful place in shaping the global peace and security agenda.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa's G20 presidency will continue to advocate for action to ensure debt sustainability for low-income countries. He was addressing the high-level virtual meeting of the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development.
Policy space available to developing countries is significantly constrained by the servicing obligations of their debt and climate and development financing needs that they also have. We know, for example, that 23 countries in Africa are paying more for debt costs than critical development enablers like health and education. South Africa seeks to advance sustainable solutions to tackle high structural deficits and liquidity challenges and extend debt relief to developing economies.
An Australian woman accused of poisonous mushrooms to murder 3 elderly relatives of her estranged husband says that she may have accidentally included foraged mushrooms in the meal she served. Sean Hogan has more.
50-year-old Erin Patterson is charged with the 2023 murders of her mother-in-law Gail Patterson, father-in-law Donald Patterson, and Gail's sister Heather Wilkinson, along with the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, Heather's husband. In a case that has gripped the public, the prosecution alleges she knowingly served the guests lethal death cap mushrooms in a beef Wellington pastry dish at her home in Leongatha, a small town some 84 miles from Melbourne. She also admitted to inventing medical issues, partly to elicit sympathy from her estranged husband's relatives, as she felt they were growing apart. The prosecution accuses Patterson of inventing the issues to lure the victims to her home for the meal, a claim she denies. She denies the charges, with her defence saying the deaths were a terrible accident. She faces a life sentence if found guilty.
And finally, Mozambique's President Daniel Francisco Chapo is expected to arrive in Malawi today for a 2-day state visit. The trip will be the first time for Chapo to visit Malawi as President of Mozambique since his election late last year. He will hold bilateral talks with Malawian counterpart Lazarus Chakwera, focused on furthering, deepening and consolidating the relations between Malawi and Mozambique. That's how we come to the end of today's segment of the Africa Roundup. Coming up, we'll be in conversation looking deeper into the Central African region in terms of stories and headlines there that you need to note. And Peter Ndoro will be spearheading that conversation, my colleague. It's so weird when I say your surname. Anyway, that's coming up on Africa Rise and Shine. Stay with us. 13 minutes past 6.
Hi, I'm Tami Ngubeni, anchor of Africa in Business on Channel Africa, bringing you the African perspective.
And I'm Ashraf Garda, host of the National Pulse on SAFM, leading the conversation.
We've joined forces to bring you in-depth, exclusive G20 developments as we count down to the much-awaited inaugural G20 Summit in South Africa, November 2025.
Tune in every Thursday at 16:20 Central African Time as we explore how this first G20 in Africa impacts the continent, from trade and innovation to climate and development.
It's a powerful crossover between Channel Africa and SAFM
as we bring you the G20 through an African lens.
The G20 in Africa.
Global Summit.
An African voice.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So it's time for us to turn our attention to developments making headlines across Eastern Central Africa. From the worsening refugee crisis to regional political shifts and major economic plans, the continent is navigating a complex landscape. And one of the most pressing issues is highlighted in a new report by the Norwegian Refugee Council, which names Cameroon as one of the world's most neglected displacement crises. The report cites a lack of humanitarian funding, a minimal media coverage, and weak international political engagement as key reasons for the neglect. Well, before we unpack that and other regional developments, let's listen to this report by Channel Africa's Ayanda Mkwanazi, who spoke to Christelle Hyo, who's the NRC's regional head for advocacy, media, and communications.
In Cameroon in 2024, you had more than a million people that were internally displaced, and also almost 500,000 refugees inside the country. What is quite specific about Cameroon is that actually you have three different crises. So first of all, you have one in the far north region, which is at the border with Nigeria, but basically has been affected by the fighting between armed groups, which has led to more than 700,000 people facing acute food insecurity in 2024. Then you have the northwest and southwest regions where you have 600,000 people that are displaced and that are struggling to access basically the basic services, including safe and clean water or emergency housing. And then at the end, you have the east of the country, which is at the border with Central African Republic, where you have hundreds of thousands of refugees from CAR that have sought refuge in Cameroon, but for many of them for more than a decade.
Now, Christelle, you know, Cameroon is in this situation now and it's quite devastating. Are there any recommendations that the NRC has put forward that could just try and reduce such or incidences such as these?
Even if the situation is bleak, there is always hope. You know, neglect is a choice. It's something that we can reverse. For that, first of all, we ask donor countries to stand in solidarity with the most neglected people and to ensure that neglected crises are high on the list of humanitarian priorities. Second of all, we also ask donors to support local NGOs and international NGOs. First, with funding, because NGOs are the ones that are closer to the communities, knowing their needs, and also because we are able to adapt quickly. It's really critical today to bridge the gap between this emergency response and longer-term development to ensure that populations can be self-reliant and can start building for themselves a better future.
That was Christelle Hyo of the Norwegian Refugee Council speaking to Channel Africa's Ayanda Mkwanazi. Now, to help us analyze these stories and explore what they mean for the region, we're now joined by geopolitical analyst Aaron Ngambi. Aaron, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Good morning to you, Peter, and thank you for having me.
So, Aaron, we've just heard about this story of Cameroon, the world's most neglected displacement crisis. What do you think? Why do you think this crisis receives so little attention? And what are the political or structural reasons for this neglect?
I think one of the reasons why conflicts like these are mostly neglected, it's because on the international stage, they are looked at in terms of being a national crisis or conflicts, internal conflicts, for lack of a better term. And this is why you find that just within Cameroon, there's been almost 1 million people displaced, particularly from the northwest and southwest. And so the international community wants to be somewhat, quote unquote, careful when meddling in these issues. You will recall, Peter, that Cameroon has had a long history of, Anglophone and Francophone conflicts between the French-speaking and the English-speaking Cameroonians. So this, and then on top of that, you have all this conflict from the surrounding neighboring countries, and pouring in refugees in Cameroon makes the situation very complex. But I think the reason why it doesn't receive a lot of attention is because most actors and players on the international stage look at this with narrow lenses and look at this as a national crisis for Cameroon.
Let's turn our attention to Chad, a country which is now hosting the majority of refugees that are fleeing Sudan's conflict, with numbers more than tripling in just 2 years. What are the implications of this influx for Chad's stability and regional security, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question with Chad, because Chad is really making headways in terms of trying to get its national development agenda going forward. If you look at the Chad Connection 2030, it is working very hard with the International Monetary Fund. They just had, staff level agreement in terms of its extended credit facility of $630 billion. So Chad is trying to be on the march. They're trying to do everything they can to secure this this package from the IMF, and also project this national agenda in terms of development and investment. But at the same time, there are challenges such as the influx of these refugees coming in, particularly, as we've mentioned, from Sudan. We've had huge numbers of refugees that have come in since the war broke out in Sudan over 2 years now. And this is a burden on Chad, because Chad has to provide shelter and the basic necessities of life to these refugees.
It sounds like maybe the international community is not doing enough to support Chad in managing this humanitarian burden.
Well, rightfully so. I think that there's a lot that can be done in terms of the United Nations agencies for human rights and other organizations on the international community. But also, I think that the problem is that even the crisis in Sudan has not been given the attention that it deserves. I think that there's been more people killed and displaced in Sudan than probably in Ukraine. And so I think that until Sudan gets the attention that is needed, where you have UN Security Council resolutions to stop the fighting, call for a ceasefire, I think that that can be seen as the international community actually doing more. Right now, it seems that there's very little that is being done in terms of intervening in this humanitarian crisis in Sudan.
Chad is also pushing for $30 billion to fund its new national development plan. How realistic is this target? It's a lot of money. And what sectors are they prioritizing for investment?
Well, the definitely pushing for $30 billion for their national development plan. And this is in relation to Chad Connection 2030. This is the theme. And so they're doing everything they can to focus on growing the economy at home, and actually also trying to focus on making the country self-reliant in the long term. Now, some of the things specifically that Chad wants to achieve in terms of this is to encourage the country to, diversify from being dependent on any specific raw materials or resources that they have to go into different ventures. Therefore, I think that it is, on paper, it looks very realistic and looks like it's very ambitious. But like I said, this is also partly supported by the IMF and the World Bank program. And so it has all the support that it needs to succeed.
All right, let's turn our attention to Gabon now. The country's announced a halt to manganese exports by 2029. Do you know what's driving this move? And is it part of a broader trend of African nations trying to retain more value from their mineral resources?
Yeah, so I think the motivation for Gabon to do this is primarily because of what we are seeing in other parts of Africa. I think that there's a lot of talk about Africa being self-reliant and self-sustainable, but also for Gabon, this is an issue of value addition. So they've made a deliberate decision not to be able to export raw manganese by 2029 so that they can create industries at home that will process these raw materials and then be able to export finished products. That way they can create jobs at home, they can add value addition, and they've given actually the industries which are currently in this space about 3 years to make these local transformation facilities. So within the space of 3 years, we're going to see companies scale down from actually exporting raw manganese to actually start building facilities that will begin to process these into finished products that they can export. This is a homegrown solution for Gabon, and I think that Gabon is in the right direction on this, and this is something that other countries will begin to catch on in Africa.
We've heard this story before, though, and very few countries have been able to do this all that well. Do you think that there's more to it than they think is possible? I guess skills and resources beyond just wanting to change are required here.
Yeah, I think that the difficulty is not really in the physics or the actualization of doing this, but it is more of the political side of things. I think that you will agree with me that Africa for the longest time has been trying to have this free trade area across the continent so that we can trade freely with other countries without any barriers. I think these and other political indicators and factors has been the constraints on most of the African countries to achieve this. But we're seeing those shackles come off. We're seeing politicians have this political will to drive an agenda that can make this possible. One of the things that also Gabon wants to do in this process is that by 2027, which is about a year and a half from now, they want to encourage local poultry production. So they've made a deliberate move again that they will not, they will actually ban chicken and meat imports so that they can encourage these small-scale traders and farmers at home who grow chickens and meat and be able to feed the population. This is doable. The problem is just the politics of it and how you actualize it.
Okay, the Democratic Republic of Congo has just been elected to the UN Security Council. How significant is this for the DRC itself, do you think?
I think this is very significant for the DRC, especially when you look at the circumstances prevailing. The DRC has been in a perpetual conflict in the eastern part of the country with M23 rebels and other countries implicated in, other neighboring countries implicated in the crisis. Therefore, for the DRC to have a non-permanent seat at the United Nations going to January 2026, this is very significant. And the country will sit in the United Nations Security Council for 2 years, and hopefully within this period they can be able to shed more light on what is happening at home, be able to relate to other countries that may have similar conflicts on the continent, and be able to work in the best interest of everybody to resolve conflict and be able to bring peace and stability to the country.
That's what it sounds like on paper, but with these permanent voting members, in the end, actually, it's what they want that counts.
That's true. The problem with the United Nations Security Council is that sometimes it's very difficult to pass certain resolutions because of the 5 permanent members who have a veto power. And it just takes one of them to veto a resolution, and that is the end of that resolution. So, but again, it takes a lot of skill and tact for non-permanent members to actually persuade and convince these 5 permanent members to achieve certain objectives and specific goals. It is doable. It is not impossible, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, one hopes that there can be a shift because often the disagreements between China, Russia, and maybe the other Western countries ends up with us stuck in the middle as a continent.
Absolutely, Peter. I'll give you a very quick example. In 1972, Zambia was one of the non-permanent members on the Security Council. And the question that came up at that time was the issue of recognizing either the Republic of China or the People's Republic of China and its admission into the United Nations organs. It is Zambia that moved the motion to actually recognize Beijing, the People's Republic of China, and to be admitted to all the Security Council organs. And at that time, this was during the height of the Cold War. So you have China and Russia on one side, you have the United States on the other side. But it took a lot of skilled diplomats in Zambia at that time, Dr. Vernon Mwanga, and others to persuade both the United States diplomats, the Russian diplomats, the Chinese diplomats, and everyone across the board to actually admit the People's Republic of China. So this is something that takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of work, but it is definitely doable. Diplomacy, the wheels of diplomacy sometimes moves very slow, but you have to have a lot of skill and tact.
And that's where we'll leave it for today. Aaron, always great talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your insights.
Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Same to you. That's geopolitical analyst Aaron Ngambi talking to us about events that have been playing out in Eastern Central Africa this morning. Okay, it's time for your news headlines. Good morning once again to Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Burundians head to the polls today for the country's first legislative elections since 2020. For the first time, these elections will be held separately from presidential elections that are slated for 2027. The KwaZulu-Natal Province Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi says enforcing the law against undocumented immigrants continues to be a challenge for police in South Africa. And President Donald Trump has signed a proclamation banning entry to the United States for citizens from 12 African and Asian countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, and Yemen. Entry from 7 other countries, including Cuba and Venezuela, will be partially restricted. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's get our sports update and say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Thank you so much, Asanda. We'll start our sports bulletin with this story. So Novak Djokovic continued his quest for a standalone record 25th Grand Slam title by swatting aside third seed Alexander Zverev to reach the French Open semi-finals. The 38-year-old sixth seed won 4-6, 6-3, 6-2 and 6-4 to set up a meeting with the current world number 1 Jannik Sinner on Friday. Djokovic, who is a 3-time Roland Garros title winner, lost the opening set to 2024 runner-up Zverev after being broken in the first game of the match. But the Serbian did great not to drop serve again, although he did had to survive a 41-shot exchange on breakpoint at 3-2 in the fourth set on his way to sealing a record-extending 51st Grand Slam semi-final appearance, where they face off with Sinner on Friday. Sinner, by the way, cruised into the last four with a ruthless straight-set victory over Kazakhstan's Alexander Bublik earlier on Thursday, or should I say on Wednesday. So the Italian is still yet to drop a set at Roland Garros after winning 6-1, 7-5 and 6-love and bringing 62 ranked Bublik's remarkable run to the end. Now Sinner is hunting a first title on the Paris clay after previously only gone as far as the semi-finals, losing a 5-set thriller to Spain's Carlos Alcaraz just last year. Djokovic or Sinner will meet the winner of defending champion
champion Alcaraz, as well as Italian 8th seed Lorenzo Musetti, who will play in the other semi-final. Meanwhile, world number 361 Louis Boisson says she's not satisfied after defying the odds to reach the semi-finals of the French Open and now wants to fulfill a childhood dream of winning her home Grand Slam tournament. Boisson, who entered Roland Garros draw as a wild card, ensured her fairy tale run would continue following a 7-6, 6-3 triumph over 6th seed Miria Andreeva. The Frenchwoman now has beaten 3 seeded players en route to the last 4, where she will now meet the world number 2 Coco Gauff in the semi-finals. Boisson, appearing in her first ever Grand Slam main draw, was set up to be a wild card at Roland Garros last year, but had to pull out after tearing her ACL in her knee just a week before the French Open was due to begin. But 12 months later, she becomes the first player in the Open era to reach the women's singles semi-finals at the French Open as a wild card, and the first French semi-finalist since Marion Bartoli back in 2011. On to football news now. Hugo Broos, the long-serving Bafana Bafana coach, has confirmed his decision regarding his future with the squad a year before his current contract is set to expire in 2026. Broos recently surpassed the late South African football legend Clive Barker as the longest-serving Bafana Bafana coach on the 5th of May. The Belgian's contract is set to expire after the FIFA World Cup in 2026. He was appointed as Bafana Bafana head coach in May of 2021, the 73-year-old guiding South Africa to a bronze medal at the AFCON tournament in the Ivory Coast just last year. So speaking to the media in Polokwane in South Africa's Limpopo province on Wednesday, Bruce confirmed that he will quit coaching after the World Cup tournament in the USA, also in Mexico as well as Canada. Bruce has been coaching for nearly 40 years, and with Bafana Bafana now in the driving seat to qualify for next year's Global Showpiece, he did say that he could have a fairy tale ending if everything goes well in the qualifiers. Onto this now. The chairperson of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee for Sports, Arts and Culture in South Africa, Joseph Mogulwa, has lambasted the tendency of Minister Gayton McKenzie not to attend its meetings. Now, Gulwa raised his concern before the South African Football Association's briefing to the Committee on issues relating to the association's finances, as well as the implementation of the Video Assistant Referee, also known as VAR. McKenzie wants VAR implemented as well as operational at the start of next season. SAFA has put in a tender out for the supply of video assistant referee equipment. Now, a tender committee was also appointed to study the submissions of the approved VAR suppliers who have applied in this process. According to SAFA's Paulo Marquez, these suppliers have shown a lot of interest in helping with the implementation of VAR.
The tender has officially gone out. We've received 2 interested companies, one being international, one being local. I cannot disclose the companies because that tender has not been finalized. That process still has to take place. What I can give you is the average of costs. We are at an advantage where we have, on average now, I think we've got about 8 match officials that have extensively been trained through FIFA. FIFA is overseeing this whole process. They have to oversee it.
However, the chairperson of that committee, Joseph Mogulwa, was disappointed by the absence of the sports minister, Gayton McKenzie, a vocal supporter of the implementation of VAR.
So I'm going to start on a very low note, and allow me to do this with a disclaimer of the minister's absence in today's very important meeting. This is uncalled for and unacceptable for the minister being absent, especially in cases where we have to take important decisions. The minister is accountable to Parliament, and we cannot go on like this. There are certain things officials cannot respond to, and certain things where we need the minister to answer to this committee.
Right, so that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Musibudi, thanks very much indeed. It's time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of business, commerce, industry. As we say good morning to Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The South African Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mantashe, says the impending gas cliff or gas supply crunch is not a certainty. Mantashe, together with other stakeholders in the gas industry, briefed the Portfolio Committee on Mineral and Petroleum Resources on the impending gas cliff. MPs were told by entities involved in gas supply that policy changes are necessary as the country navigates the gas supply crunch, which is expected to hit the middle of 2028. Mantashe has this response.
This debate of a gas cliff remains very fragmented and all over. Without any effort to develop a coherent strategy to deal with it. That's my view. I'm expressing a view here. That's why the emphasis will be on gas imports without looking into our own gas deposits and exploitation thereof.
Questions have been raised about the motives behind the draft Mineral Resources Development Bill open for public comment in South Africa. The draft amendments introduce mechanisms to designate areas for small-scale and artisanal mining, among other changes. Interested parties have until the 13th of August this year to submit written comments. Veteran mining analyst Peter Major has criticized the fact that the bill addresses artisanal mining rights, questioning government's focus on small-scale farmers. The International Monetary Fund says it views Senegal's plan to enhance tax compliance and cut reliance on external financing as a positive step, but it will have no bearing on the handling of a misreporting case. Senegal, which is engaging with the IMF to find a resolution after misreporting debt and deficit levels, has had a year without any disbursements from the fund after its 1.8 billion program was suspended. Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko says the experience has shown the country can manage its finances and the economy without external help. Nigeria is witnessing a significant shift in its oil and gas landscape as local companies expand their roles, driving a new phase of potential sectoral growth and innovation. Leading the charge are companies which brought onshore and shallow water assets from oil majors planning billions of dollars of investments to develop abandoned fields. Smaller producers are also pulling their weight. For example, Nigeria's first locally developed and operated onshore crude terminal, Otakipo, began loading operations on Monday. Fitch has downgraded Afreximbank's credit ratings to one notch above junk with a negative outlook, citing high credit risks and weak risk management policies. The one-notch downgrade to BBB comes as the African lender battles to protect its loans from restructuring in Ghana, Zambia and Malawi, claiming that as a multilateral lender it has preferred creditor status. Fitch pegged Afreximbank non-performing loans at 7.1% at the end of 2024, while the bank itself reported a first-quarter NPL ratio of 2.44%. Let's have a look at financial indicators this morning. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Naira 579, Botswana 13.29. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 552, Zambia 26 kwacha 30. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 63, Russia 78 rubles 95, India 85 rupee 85, China 71.18, South Africa 17 rand 82 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound, 87 to the euro. Gold is at $3,368, platinum at $1,093 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $64.83 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peta are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Time now for our G20 fact for this Thursday, the 5th of June. Did you know that G20 South Africa's presidency prioritizes inclusive economic growth, industrialization, employment, reduced inequality, and sustainable development? South Africa assumed the G20 presidency on December 1st, 2024, and will hold it until November 2025. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Révérend Dr Allen.
Je suis content, très heureux d'être de la partie ce soir et bonjour à tous nos auditeurs.
Je rappelle que pour les intimes, il vous appelle bien sûr BMB. Aujourd'hui, nous parlons courage sur Mix Vibration. Comment définissez-vous le terme courageux?
Ça vient du latin cor, qui veut tout simplement exprimer la bravoure, la force de l'âme ou encore la virilité, le héroïsme que quelqu'un peut avoir en face de difficultés, en face de problèmes, en face de défis.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The United Nations has raised grave concerns following the discovery of dozens of bodies in areas in the Libyan capital, Tripoli, previously controlled by a powerful militia. The Stabilization Support Apparatus, the SSA, whose leader was slain in clashes last month. Here's a report by Lebahang Mabang.
United Nations Rights Chief Volker Turk said on Wednesday that his office was shocked by evidence of severe human rights violations at detention sites run by the SSA, a group once led by Abdel Ghani al-Kikli, who was killed during an eruption of fighting in mid-May in Tripoli. Jeremy Lawrence is the spokesperson for the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights.
We are shocked by revelations of gross human rights violations uncovered at official and unofficial detention facilities run by the Stabilization Support Apparatus force in the Libyan capital of Tripoli. Dozens of bodies have been found, along with the discovery of suspected instruments of torture and abuse and potential evidence of extrajudicial killings.
Investigators were informed that 10 charred bodies were found at the SSA's base in Abu Salim, while another 67 corpses were recovered from hospital refrigerators at Abu Salim and Al-Qadra facilities. A suspected burial site was also reported at the Tripoli Zoo, which had been under SSA control. The identities of the victims remain unknown. Lawrence added that this confirms the long-standing findings by the United Nations as well as from various witness accounts regarding the existence of such sites and the extent of violations committed in connection with them.
This confirms the long-standing findings by the UN as well as from various witness accounts regarding the existence of such sites and the extent of violations committed in connection with them. These sites must be sealed and all potential evidence preserved in support of immediate accountability efforts. We call on the Libyan authorities to conduct independent, impartial and transparent investigations into these discoveries. Those responsible for these atrocious acts must be brought to justice without delay and in accordance with international standards. We urge the authorities to grant Libya's forensic authorities, as well as the United Nations, full and unimpeded access to all sites.
They also have received reports protests were met with unnecessary force, raising serious concerns with respect to the guarantee of the fundamental rights of freedom of expression and assembly in that country.
Our office is also monitoring closely the situation on the ground in Tripoli following the killing last month of the SSA's leader and subsequent clashes between state security actors and armed groups. This in turn set off a wave of deadly protests. We have received reports that these protests were met with unnecessary force, raising serious concerns with respect to the guarantee of the fundamental rights of freedom of expression and assembly, as well as the need to protect civic space. The UN Human Rights Office calls on all responsible political and security actors in Libya to use their leadership and authority to protect and fulfill the human rights of everyone in the country. Furthermore, we urge these actors and those with influence over them to redouble their efforts to end the recurring cycle of transitional arrangements and establish a full and inclusive democracy.
With no unified national force, Tripoli remains at the mercy of competing armed factions, many of which operate with impunity. The UN continues to push for dialogue and a ceasefire mechanism as part of wider efforts to stabilize the country. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
Hi, I'm Tami Ngubeni, anchor of Africa in Business on Channel Africa, bringing you the African perspective.
And I'm Ashraf Garda, host of the National Pulse on SAFM, leading the conversations.
We've joined forces to bring you in-depth, exclusive G20 developments as we count down to the much-awaited inaugural G20 summit in South Africa, November 2025.
Tune in every Thursday at 16:20 Central African Time as we explore how this first G20 in Africa impacts the continent, from trade and innovation to climate and development.
It's a powerful crossover between Channel Africa and SAFM
as we bring you the G20 through an African lens.
The G20 in Africa.
Global Summit.
An African voice.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Professor David Kinley, a leading global authority on human rights law and corporate accountability, will this month launch a new book telling the true story of how a British multinational Cape PLC was finally held responsible for decades of asbestos mining in South Africa. Mining that exposed thousands of black and colored workers, including children, to deadly conditions. The new book, titled In a Rain of Dust, Death, Deceit, and the Lawyer Who Busted Big Asbestos, follows the groundbreaking legal battle led by British human rights lawyer Richard Meeran, a fight that reshaped corporate accountability laws worldwide and exposed one of the greatest corporate human rights scandals of our time. Professor Kinley joins us now on the line to discuss this. Professor, thank you so much for joining us on Rise and Shine. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right. Give us a bit of background in regards to that time in South Africa where lives were lost to asbestos mining in the country.
Well, the Cape Industries, which was the British firm you mentioned in the intro, mined asbestos in Limpopo province and Northern Cape for nearly 90 years. The second half of those 90 years were during the time of apartheid. And in that time, from the 1950s through to the late 1970s, they were able to exploit the discriminatory employment laws and indeed an accommodating environment for their profit and business. And as a consequence, many, as you said, many thousands, probably many hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives and livelihoods as a consequence.
How was this mining project sold to South Africa, and what was it meant to achieve?
Well, of course, it wasn't so much sold as the British took the advantage of having occupied lots of Africa, but including Southern Africa. And their companies, therefore, when they found asbestos, as they did, particularly the two types of asbestos which are the most virulent, and they're only found in South Africa, except for one other place, and that is actually my home of Australia. Blue asbestos is also found there. But they exploited this because of the enormous practicality of asbestos, extremely strong, versatile, weavable, and of course fire retardant. So it wasn't so much that they sold it to South Africa, they took it from South Africa, and in that process did so in a way that produced just literally huge amounts of dust, which on its face seems harmless, but of course when you analyze the content, the constitution of that dust, one now knows medically how appalling it is and what destruction it wreaks on the human body.
And what type of destruction does it wreak on the human body? What are the health dangers as a result of asbestos exposure?
Well, most people, of course, associate it with breathing the dust, which is the main problem. Once it's into your lungs, the size, the shape, and what they call the biopersistence, the hardness of these tiny particles of dust, of blue and brown asbestos in particular, they simply aren't able to be ejected by our normal body systems that deal with so much dust on a daily basis. That's when they get through that defense and deep into the lungs, then they irritate what should be dust-free environments. They even penetrate the lungs into the wall, the cavity between our chest and our lung. And in there, it should be silky smooth where our lungs move up and down on a daily basis. And once they're in there, they agitate. Your body then has its defense mechanisms, which produces huge plaques, which are hardened soap-like balls to try and protect the lining. And ultimately, they can produce and have produced mesothelioma, a cancer of the lung, a lung lining. And that, it was proven, was peculiarly associated with blue and brown asbestos, the two types of asbestos being mined in South Africa.
So how did this case impact international human rights and corporate responsibility law?
Well, really the main thing that it did was to show that if you have somebody who is committed and willing to put their livelihoods on the line, which is what Richard did, a young lawyer with no money backing him, a tiny law firm, threadbare, nevertheless find the injustice of this, that Cape would seem to be getting away with it, that he sought to sue them in the British courts. And that was the first step that made it extraordinary. He's trying to sue a British corporation in Britain's courts for alleged negligence and damage done in another country, South Africa, and what's more, done by the subsidiaries of that parent company in the United Kingdom. And those are two huge legal obstacles. Indeed, as I say in the book, he was told, you haven't a chance. Good idea, but you don't have a chance. But he persevered, and with lots of ups and downs and all sorts of cul-de-sacs and problems, he nevertheless won the case in after 7 years. What he actually won was the opportunity to have the trial taken place in the United Kingdom's courts. So it was really just the sort of the first big door that was opened, rather than actually winning a judgment. However, having exposed so much of his evidence that Cape knew about the dangers that they had exposed their workers to, Cape realized that if there was a trial in the United Kingdom, that a lot of their dirty linen would be washed in public. So they sought to settle. It did take them 3 years to settle, but they did settle the case. And compensation, maybe not much, but some thousands of sterling, of dollars, got to the victims in the end.
As you say, I mean, the legal fight, which has been dubbed David versus Goliath case, as far as corporate accountability laws have been reshaped from this particular scandal, do we really see the reshaping as satisfactory when it applies to Africa? I cite the continuous use of even pesticides from the European Union and places like Germany, against which activism within the agricultural sectors has emerged. Is Africa seen as a dumping site, which is for that which is undesirable for European countries or sectors, or a guinea pig?
Well, actually, this is one of the features of the case. Now, what I've described about the case is an opportunity, and some of the aspects of that opportunity have been taken. But you're quite right to identify the fact that by no means has it been a panacea. The opportunity I'm referring to is the fact that home state litigation, so suing a corporation where it is headquartered for damage that it has done overseas, as you say, European corporations operating in Africa, that is now a well-worn track. It's still not an easy track to pursue for all sorts of evidentiary reasons, and indeed the length of time and having to find the funding for the lawyers who pursue it and the activists that pursue it, but it is there. It's possible. What's more, there are now really robust but still needing a lot of tweaking laws in many Western countries that demand corporations to recognize their supply chain, where their products come from and where their products go to, and the responsibility that might then adhere to those lines, those supply lines.
All right.
Now, really, that is a backstop because you're relying on the Western legal systems. What you really want is all countries, all 196 countries, to have robust legal systems such that they don't allow corporations to despoil the environment or to damage people's health through their activities. But in the interim, this is one way in which to, as it were, force corporations to be more accountable.
How do we get the book? Where can we get it, Professor?
Well, at the moment, it's available in 2 bookstores in South Africa. Cape Town is the Book Lounge, and Love Books in Johannesburg. It's available online as well. It was published last month.
Okay, thank you so much again. We appreciate your time. Professor Kinley, author of that book titled In a Rain of Dust, Death, Deceit, and the lawyer who busted big asbestos. That's on a human rights perspective in terms of mining of asbestos in South Africa and how that affected many, many lives. Let's go straight to our news update as we enter the second hour of Rise and Shine. We say good morning to Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Burundians head to the polls today for the country's first legislative elections since 2020. For the first time, these elections will be held separately from presidential elections that are slated for 2027. The Burundian constitution, which was revised in 2018, now includes a change in the length of the presidential term from 5 to 7 years. This is a key test for President Evariste Ndayishimiye, whose ruling party, the CNDD-FDD, has dominated the political scene for nearly 2 decades. The Economic Freedom Fighters leader, Julius Malema, says the concept of black unity amongst black political parties in South Africa can not only be directed to his political party. Malema's comments come as the African Congress for Transformation, led by Ace Magashule, called for black unity amongst political parties, including the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. Malema says those calling for black unity should have joined the EFF instead of forming other parties. He was speaking to the media in Pretoria after paying his respect to the family of Tsotsi actor and the River star, Presley Choniagai.
I've got a problem. Why is this unity of black parties only directed at EFF? They never complain that the ANC doesn't want to unite with them. They never complain that PA doesn't want to unite with them. every time EFF. We are not going to allow that. You can see it's not black unity. This is an agenda to destroy the EFF. Because why are they not giving you a report about black unity with UDM? Why are they not giving you a report about all these many black formations that are there?
Some gender-based violence and femicide advocacy groups in South Africa are calling on the government to swiftly declare a state of disaster following the escalating cases of GBV. They believe the situation requires a multifaceted approach from all sectors of society. This comes amid the recent murder of a 30-year-old Olarato Mangale and that of a 14-year-old Likona Fose. GBV activist Lebu Ramafoko says the country has lost the fight against crime.
I think not only a national disaster, but a state of emergency. We need a state of emergency. The same way we responded to COVID, because people were dying. We know what needs to be done. It's a multifaceted approach. We need it as an emergency. You need to declare this as a state of emergency. We knew how to do it during the World Cup. There were courts in the middle of the roads, courts that were open. We treated the World Soccer because there were international guests coming in better than we are treating our women who are looking after society, who are citizens.
Nearly 1.5 million Muslim pilgrims will today perform the most important ritual of the Hajj pilgrimage, ascending Mount Arafat. The area southeast of Mecca is where the crowds are most exposed to the summer heat. The BBC's Youssef Taha elaborates.
With temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius, Saudi officials say they have stepped up safety precautions, planted thousands of trees and installed hundreds of cooling units and water sprinklers. The Hajj minister also said that shaded areas had been increased by 50,000 square meters. Extreme heat killed nearly 1,300 people last year. Most were unregistered and therefore unable to access air-conditioned amenities. With security tighter than ever, officials are using CCTV and drones to monitor proceedings. They say they have stopped more than 250,000 unregistered people from entering Mecca this year.
Lastly, President Donald Trump has signed a proclamation banning entry to the United States for citizens from 12 African and Asian countries, including Afghanistan, Iran and Yemen. Entry from 7 other countries, including Cuba and Venezuela, will be partially restricted. Trump said the U.S. couldn't have what he called open migration from countries which lacked proper vetting procedures. The BBC's Jake No.
President Trump said that on his first day back in office, he'd ordered a review of countries whose travelers posed a threat to U.S. national security, such as those with a large number of terrorists. Mr. Trump promised the ban would protect Americans from attacks such as last Sunday's firebombing in Colorado. However, the suspect in that case comes from Egypt, which is not on the list. The ban is expected to face legal and political challenges, as Mr. Trump did when he implemented a similar policy in his first term, targeting Muslim-majority countries for 90 days. Unlike that version, today's ban does not have an end date.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Cristiano Ronaldo scored his 137th international goal for Portugal to beat Germany and reach the Nations League final, while Novak Djokovic beats Alexander Zverev to move into the semi-finals of the French Open. Details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Now, as the world observes World Environment Day under the theme Drive Systemic Change for a Sustainable Future, attention is turning to a silent but devastating contributor to climate change, and that's food waste. In South Africa, more than 10 million tons of food, which is still edible, is wasted every year, even as over 18 million people go hungry. Now, that food often ends up in landfills, releasing methane, a greenhouse gas far more potent than carbon dioxide. But one organization is proving that food rescue can can be more charity than charity. It can be climate action, actually. SA Harvest is using data-driven logistics and innovative partnerships to intercept surplus food before it becomes waste and redirect it to communities in need, whilst at the same time minimizing emissions and reshaping supply chains. Well, joining us now is Ozzy Nell, who's the Chief Operating Officer of SA Harvest, to talk about how food systems can and must actually lead the climate conversation. Ozzy, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Morning, Peter. Always good to speak to you folks at Channel Africa.
I'm fascinated by the work that you do. Tell us a little bit about what inspired SA Harvest and how it's been working.
Yeah, so we're a food rescue organization, and what that means is that we work in the value chain, and we redirect large amounts of food into community-based organizations. When we built SA Harvest, from the beginning, it was always going to be about building deep-rooted relationships in our community-based organizations. So we transport volumes of food into these organizations, and then they turn it into nutritious meals. And of course, this is tracked with data in our own internal track platform, and that obviously makes it completely transparent in the value chain. And we've really had huge successes by building a huge collaboration of other partners. So we work with large-scale manufacturers, and then we work with large-scale logistics partners. So instead of adding to the emissions in the country and with a large fleet of our own, we are actually using the logistics companies and what they call the empty legs. So when the truck comes back empty from a certain destination, we've managed to map this, and with the work of the Road Freight Association of South Africa, we are able to move a lot of stock all over the province through these logistical capabilities of other large organizations.
So how is it that South Africa has managed to waste so much food? Are there systemic failures at the heart of this issue?
Look, I mean, the food value chain is really complex. And believe it or not, the consumers are also to blame. Us, when we go to a shopping center, we will not buy a skewed carrot or a pepper that slightly has a slight color variation. But also, if you look at exports, specifically from a farming point of view, the packaging is pre-manufactured. So if a farmer does avo and a box contains 12 avos, and that's the standard for exports, as soon as the avos become too big or too small, it changes, and that creates a lot of waste. And believe it or not, in this country alone, it amounts to over 10 million tons.
Wow, 10 million tons. Okay, so most of us, and I must put my hand up, didn't immediately connect food waste to climate change. Take us through how food loss contributes to emissions and why it needs to be taken more seriously in terms of climate action.
Look, I think, in the past, people always looked at, the expert looked at energy and the loss of energy and various other factors, but no one ever considered how food that goes into landfill emits a lot of emissions. And to give you a scary statistic, we believe that more than a third of all food produced in the world actually ends up in landfill. And then it's not just about the emissions, even though the emissions are very serious because it affects the ozone. It's also about, water that we use to produce this food that has been wasted. It is also about transporting this food, and, so there's various different parts of energy that's also wasted in this value chain. And hence, food is one of the biggest, factors of climate change, food loss.
As we chat and some of the things that you've told me, one gets a sense that it's food rescue, but in many respects, your operation is about logistics, reverse logistics to reduce emissions, but also finding a way to make things scalable and replicable across South Africa. Talk to us a little bit about your logistics story, because that's at the heart of what your achievements are about.
Absolutely. When we built SA Harvest, we felt that we need to be smart about this. We don't want to add to emissions. And through joining the Road Traffic Association of South Africa, we were able to actually partner and form a collaboration with large-scale logistics partners. And you'll find within the logistics network in that value chain, there are a lot of trucks that are coming back empty from a certain destination. So with technology, we have been able to plot where the most waste occurs, and a lot of waste in South Africa is really at manufacturer or farm level. And we have mapped that with logistic companies where they have empty returns. And that has been an absolute game changer. Not only does that lessen what we put into the atmosphere, but it's just a smart way of building a collaboration for various other stakeholders within this value chain to be able to give back and create impact within their own companies as well.
What kind of policy or regulatory support do you think is required that would make all the difference?
Peter, you know what? There's a huge focus at the moment on banning food to landfill, but I believe we've got to go a lot further than that. You know, we need to also get government also to subsidize and put in structures so they make it as easy as possible for the donations of food into organizations like ourselves from their excess. And that will make a huge difference. I mean, if we look in South Africa, we know that more than 18 million people are on a scale of food vulnerability. And we have got more than 10 million tons of food going to landfill. So it really just becomes a logistical problem more than the fact that we don't have enough food in South Africa.
All right, we've run out of time, but very briefly, what's your message to governments, corporates, and ordinary citizens about how they can contribute to sustainable food systems?
Well, the problem is huge, I would say, and it will really take a collective, not just from the private sector, but also from government. And I think from consumer level, let's not be scared about best buy dates when we buy products at a retailer. And let's also create awareness within our schools, within our communities. And we'd love for people to join the SA Harvest Collective. They can follow us on our website, which is www.saharvest.org. Always looking for volunteers, looking for farmers, manufacturers, anyone that can put us in touch with anybody within this value chain that has access that we could turn into meaningful contributions into our community centers. And by that, them making meals out of it, nutritious meals.
Ozzy, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and great work that you and your team are doing. Thanks so much indeed for that. And thanks for your time this morning.
I appreciate you, Peter, and it's amazing that you give us this opportunity to also share our work with the viewers.
It's only a pleasure for us. Thank you so much. Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. That's Ozzy Nell, who's the Chief Operating Officer of SA Harvest, and great work that they're doing, and something for us to think about in terms of our contribution through food waste to climate emissions.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Kwa nini wanamuziki wengi sana wa kizazi kipya hawafiki mbali pale wanapofanya muziki?
Ni kwa sababu kitu cha kwanza ambacho naweza nikaongelea nikagusia zaidi sana ni kusema kuwa wale wasanii wanapotoa ngoma yao ya kwanza ikiwa kama kahiti kidogo tu, wanaanza kutamba mitaani, wanaonekana kama wapo majuu zaidi sana.
Kuna wanamuziki wengine ambao wanakimbilia kwa waganga wa jadi. Hivi muziki na dawa vinaendana?
Kitu cha kwanza naweza nikasema ni kuwa muziki na dawa haviendani. Lakini muziki ni kipaji.
Kuna watu wengine wanashutumu wasanii wengine kwamba wanaroga.
Wanaroga, wale wasanii kama wanaroga ni kutokujiamini tu. Lakini kitu cha muhimu sana ni kipaji.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Hi, I'm Tammy Ngubeni, anchor of Africa in Business on Channel Africa, bringing you the African perspective.
And I'm Ashraf Garda, host of the National Pulse on SAFM, leading the conversations.
We've joined forces to bring you in-depth, exclusive G20 developments as we count down to the much-awaited inaugural G20 summit in South Africa, November 2025.
Tune in every Thursday at 16:20 Central African Time as we explore how this first G20 in Africa impacts the continent from trade and innovation to climate and development.
It's a powerful crossover between Channel Africa and SAFM
as we bring you the G20 through an African lens.
The G20 in Africa.
Global Summit.
An African voice.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
19 minutes past 7 Central African Time. If you've just joined us, a good morning to you. We are still going to talk about Ivory Coast, where there have been some opposition parties excluded from the electoral list there as elections are coming up in October. We'll get into that chat a little later. But today, being the 5th of June, happy birthday if it is your birthday. Hoping you celebrate it the way that you wish and that will fulfill your desires. But your birthday is shared, if you didn't know, by John Carlos, who was born in 1945. These are the famous birthdays of this day. He's an American sprinter who performed the Black Power salute while accepting his Olympic bronze medal in 1968. Also sharing a birthday with you is Connie Chiume, the late. Was born in 1952. She died last year in 2024. South African filmmaker and actress known for her role in Black Panther. Brian McKnight was also born today. You share a birthday with him. He was born in 1969. That American R&B singer, songwriter, and musician.
Yeah, on the political front, today in history, 1981, around early June, including events dated 5th of June, Yoweri Museveni's NRA intensified its guerrilla campaign against Milton Obote's government. So he was seen as a savior back then, removing a dictatorship. And guess what happened? He got into power, and some would say the story repeated itself. But more on that a little later.
All right now let's go to Ivory Coast for that story. 4 prominent opposition figures there have been excluded from the final voter list and are ineligible to contest the October presidential election. Tijane Thiam, the leader of Ivory Coast's main opposition party, the Democratic Party of Ivory Coast, or PDCI, was struck from the voter roll in April after a court ruling cast doubt on his Ivorian nationality at the time of registration. Former President Laurent Gbagbo, his former right-hand man Charles Blé Goudé, and exiled former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro have been barred for years over past convictions and were not reinstated. None of the 4 will be allowed to contest the presidential race or vote. For more on these latest developments, we're joined on the line by Maurice Buhusu, who is a representative of the Democratic Party of Ivory Coast, that's the PDCI, based here in South Africa. Maurice, thank you so much for joining us. How are you on this Thursday?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, all the listeners. My name is Bosu Maurice. I'm a general delegate of our PDCI, African Rally Democracy in South Africa.
Well, we appreciate you making time for us, Maurice. Let's start first with, what do you make of this latest move that seems to signal the end of Thiam's presidential hopes? Registration means he won't make it in the October poll, the ballot paper, and he was already barred from the election in April.
Not at all. All Ivorians, we are so relaxed. When I'm talking about relaxing, it's not the first time that in Ivory Coast we are living in such situations. If I can take you back after the coup, because President Thiam was the Minister of Infrastructure under Henri Konan Bédié, where we have a coup in 1999 in December, where Robert Gueye took over the country, and later on, Mr. President Laurent Gbagbo took over before the rebellion in 2002. After that, from 2002 up to 2010, Mr. Alassane Ouattara, the current president, he was not eligible. He was not on the list. And then on the 6th April 2005, there's an accord in Pretoria, which make President Alassane Ouattara, the current president, to be on the list and being elected. So, coming back to the president of PDCI, President Tidiane, remove him from the list of that upcoming election. For we Ivorian, it does not make sense at all. Because when I was listening to you, you talk about he was removed from the list, and it's through the court rules. Yes, it's fine. But what make him to be ruled out of to be removed out of the list? That's the question. Who was behind that issues? That's the question.
So the reasons that were given is that he is because of his French nationality at the time of registration. But what are the actual rules governing presidential candidates' nationality?
Listen to me. We are in a radio station, and I might ask a question that everyone can be able to listen to. Before President Tidiane was in France, when he was coming to Ivory Coast to register for the vote, he used which passport? And where did he get that passport? He used Ivorian passport. And who gave him the passport? Where he get the passport? He get the passport at the embassy of Côte d'Ivoire in France. Right? And Tidiane is not just a normal person like me, like everyone in the streets. Tidiane is it's one of the most well-known person in the world, and specifically in Côte d'Ivoire. So going back to the embassy, getting a passport, get all the requirement documents, fly from France to Côte d'Ivoire to be on the list of in 2002 election. It means what? It means whatever paper that provides it was correct. Because to be able to be on the line on the list, you should provide a proper and original papers, right? So if in 2002 was on the list and they did not complain about, what made them to complain today? Because he's the president of the PDCI. And as we know, is a person that currently all Ivorians, specifically the young people, the youth, see his life, the way he studied, the way he carried out the image of the country. They recognize their own feature on this on Mr. Tidiane. That's the problem. So for the government, that I can confirm for the government, if leaving President Tidiane to be on the poll for 25 October 2025, obviously will be the president. So these are the problems that usually in Africa, the justice does not really read the stories, the life of Ivorian, and takes such decisions.
Was just,
that's what I can.
So what would it take for these decisions to bar the 4 election candidates to be overturned, and how likely is that to happen? Tiam has said that he will take the matter to the UN Rights Committee.
Yes, because remember we are living in the world. Ivory Coast is one of the countries in the world. And talk about United Nations, where Ivory Coast is part of the United Nations. So we Ivorian, we are not willing to go back to the issue of 2010, where we lost more than 3,000 or 4,000 human lives. So what President Tidiane says, no, let me take the matter to the United Nations. And from the United Nations, they are going to communicate with the government in place, not because in every country, the government got the supreme power. So they are going to call upon the government and see the way forward. But as I'm telling you, currently, the situation is very high in Côte d'Ivoire because excluding President Laurent Gbagbo, Charles Blé Goudé, Guillaume Soro, and also my president, Tidiane, it's not a good thing to listen to, going back to our past, and we are not willing to go back to our past. That's why our president straight contact the United Nations. And we are willing also to contact a country like South Africa, where President Thabo Mbeki did in 2005 to see the way forward.
So these 4 politicians are not only barred from participating in the elections as opponents or oppositions, they can't even vote. What is the Independent Electoral Commission saying?
Thank you. Remember, in Africa, I keep on saying Africa because I'm living in Africa, and usually in Africa, when talking about election, it's always a fight, always a war. And for me, when talk about the Independent Commission Electoral, it means what? You are free. No one guides you. No one gives you any instructions. But seeing what's going on, it seems like the government, it's him who ran the committee. That's the problem. Because we opposition party, we said that no, we have to revise the list of all those candidates so that we can help everyone to be on the list. Let's negotiate, because someone like President Laurent Gbagbo, he was in Holland at Hague for 2010 war. That likely they couldn't sentence him, he came back, and while he was there, the government of Ivory Coast, they sentenced him of 20 years, which is not correct. That's why we'll talk about later on, maybe one day. And then some applied to Soro Guillaume and Charles Blé Goudé, so forth. So we say that you are the head of the state. We are controlling the country. So let's sit, we as opposition party, let's sit and negotiate and see the way forward to avoid any civil war or to avoid any misunderstanding. But he refused. That's the side of the government. We approach the electoral commissions. We say, okay, let's count, let's check carefully who's supposed to be on the list and who shouldn't be on the list. The government says we cannot do against any enrollment. The same way the government is talking is the same way that Mr. Kubert talking. And even yesterday on the 4th, we published the list of the voters. It's supposed to not be the 4th. It's supposed to be on the 21st. But what pushed him to run and give such results? So the government, he's the person, I might say so, that he wants to choose, we opposition parties, our leaders, who supposed to represent us in the post, which is wrong. How comes a party like RIJP of the current president, he choose someone in our department, in our political party, to know this is the right person to choose? So for not choosing that person, automatically the best President Tijan from the list. President Gbagbo, he was.
Yeah, we have to leave it there, Maurice. Thank you so much for your time. As you say, another day we'll continue on this conversation because it is ongoing. Elections are in October, so all eyes on Ivory Coast on that. Thanks again for your time. We appreciate it on Africa Rise and Shine.
Okay, thank you.
Maurice Bosu is a representative of the Democratic Party of Ivory Coast. That's the PDCI, based here in South Africa. The PDCI's leader, Tijan Thiam, being barred from participating in the upcoming elections in October, and that's the chat that we were talking about. The rules have been made up, they're not part of a constitution, as he says. He entered the country with his valid Ivory Coast passport, but the barring is cited as being as a result of his French nationality. That continues as we cover what's happening on our continent on other days. 31 minutes past 7 Central African time. We say good morning to Onel Nsinzi now with the news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Burundians head to the polls today for the country's first legislative elections since 2020. For the first time, these elections will be held separately from presidential elections that are slated for the year 2027. The Tanzanian government says it has blocked access to the social media platform X due to what it calls pornographic content. The shutdown comes amid criticism of a crackdown on opposition ahead of October elections. And nearly 1.5 million Muslim pilgrims will today perform the most important ritual of the Hajj pilgrimage, ascending Mount Arafat. The area of southeast of Mecca is where the crowd are most exposed to the summer heat. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's find out what's been happening in the world of sport. And at the desk this morning is Musibudi Makura. And I watched that match that 40-year-old Ronaldo still playing and still scoring goals. It's astonishing. So that was Portugal beating Germany, I think, for the first time in about 20 years or something. But here are the details with Musubudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports desk. That also happens to be our leading story this hour. Cristiano Ronaldo scoring his 137th international goal for Portugal as they came from a goal down to beat Germany and reach the Nations League final last night. The 40-year-old tapped in Nuno Mendes low pass in the 68th minute for what proved to be the winner and set up a final against either Spain or France. Ronaldo's effort came just 5 minutes after Francesco Conceição had cancelled out a 48th minute Florin Ritz opener for the hosts. Portugal won the tournament first in 2019, but their hopes of a second success looked slim when they fell behind in Munich. Now, France as well as Spain play in the second semi-final in Stuttgart later on tonight, with the final set for Munich on Sunday. The match had been delayed by about 10 minutes because of a hailstorms in Munich, as the Allianz Arena hosted its second major game of the week after the UEFA Champions League final this past weekend when Paris Saint-Germain dismantled Inter Milan by 5-0. Back home now, Hugo Bruce, the longest-serving coach of Bafana Bafana, has confirmed his decision regarding his future with the side a year before his contract is set to expire in 2026. Now, Bruce recently surpassed the late South African football legend Clive Barker as the longest-serving Bafana Bafana coach on the 5th of May. The Belgian's contract is set to expire after the FIFA World Cup in 2026. So he was appointed as Bafana Bafana head coach in May of 2021. The 73-year-old also guiding South Africa to a bronze medal at the Africa Cup of Nations tournament in the Ivory Coast. Speaking to the media in Polokwane in the Limpopo province yesterday, Bruce confirmed that he will quit coaching altogether. He will retire after the FIFA World Cup in the USA, Mexico as well as Canada. Bruce also has been coaching for nearly 40 years, with Bafana Bafana now in the driving seat to qualify for next year's global showpiece. Bruce can have a fairy tale ending with the side if everything goes according to plan in the qualifiers. On to tennis news now. Novak Djokovic continued his quest for a standalone record 25th Grand Slam title by swatting aside third seed Alexandra Zverev to reach the French Open semi-finals. The 38-year-old, a 6th seed, won that game 4-6, 6-3, 6-2 and 6-4 to set up a meeting with world number 1 Jannik Sinner on Friday. Djokovic, who has 3 Roland Garros titles, lost the opening set to the 2024 runner-up after being broken in the first game of the match. But the Serbian great did not drop serve again, although he had to survive a 41-shot exchange on break point at 3-2 in the fourth set on his way to sealing a record-extending 51st Grand Slam semi-final appearance. This is what he had to say after that win.
It was an amazing match. Obviously, beating one of the best players in the world on the biggest stage is something that I definitely work for, and I still, push myself on a daily basis at this age to keep going because of these kind of matches, because of these kind of experiences. And, it's a proof and kind of testament to myself that I can, and to others that I can still play on the highest level, and
Meanwhile, world number 361 Louise Besson says she's not satisfied with defying the odds to reach the semi-finals of the French Open and wants now to fulfill a childhood dream by winning her home Grand Slam title. Besson, who entered Roland Garros draw as a wild card, ensured a fairy tale run would continue with a 7-6, 6-3 triumph over 6th seed Mireia Andreeva last night. The French woman, who has now beaten top seeds like the 3 seeded players at this competition en route to the last 4, where she'll now meet the number 2 seeded player Coco Gauff. Besson, appearing in her first Grand Slam main draw, was said to be a wildcard at Roland Garros just last year, but had to pull out after injuring her ACL in her knee just a week before the French Open was due to begin. And 12 months later, she now becomes the first player in the Open era to reach the women's singles semi-final at a French Open as a wildcard, and the first French semi-finalist since Marion Bartoli in 2011.
I really enjoy everything that
I live here on the court and outside the court, so I will see this after. For now, I just have to prepare the match of tomorrow. I just proud of myself because it was really tough for me to go into the semi-final. Every match was really tough, so I'm just proud about how it ends every time, just like I finish the match.
And finally, packed crowds in India celebrating their cricket team's victory ended in a deadly stampede on Wednesday, with 11 mainly young fans being crushed to death, with the local state's chief having confirmed the news on Wednesday. So joyous cricket fans had come out to celebrate as well as welcome home their heroes, the Royal Challengers Bengaluru, after they beat the Punjab Kings in a roller coaster Indian Premier League cricket final on Tuesday night. The euphoria, though, of the vast crowds in the southern tech city of Bengaluru ended in disaster, with Prime Minister Narendra calling it an absolutely heartbreaking incident where 11 youngsters died and 47 were injured in the crash. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the hour. A final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine comes up in the third and final hour of the show. As always, for any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Hi, I'm Tami Ngubeni, anchor of Africa in Business on Channel Africa, bringing you the African Perspective.
And I'm Ashraf Garda, host of the National Pulse on SAFM, leading the conversation.
We've joined forces to bring you in-depth, exclusive G20 developments as we count down to the much-awaited inaugural G20 summit in South Africa, November 2025.
Tune in every Thursday at 16:20 Central African Time as we explore how this first G20 in Africa impacts the continent, from trade and innovation to climate and development.
It's a powerful crossover between Channel Africa and SAFM
as we bring you the G20 through an African lens.
The G20 in Africa.
Global Summit.
An African voice.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now let's get our business update as Chandugo Lugege gives us the economics news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Ghana's consumer inflation slowed in May for the fifth month in a row to its lowest level since February 2022 as inflationary pressures ease across the board in the West African state. Government statistician Al-Hassan Idrisu told a news conference that consumer inflation eased to 18.4% year-on-year in May, from 21.2% a month earlier, adding that disinflation was expected to continue in the coming months. Idrisu says the inflation trend being witnessed by the country shows sustained deceleration, adding that food remains a key inflation driver, but the sharper drop in non-food inflation suggests a broad-based easing of inflation across the economy. South African steel manufacturing company ArcelorMittal stands to suffer financial losses should the U.S. impose 50% tariffs on aluminium imports. This according to trade analyst Viwe Njongwana, who weighed in on the recent development from the White House, which has raised concern among steel producers outside the U.S. Earlier during the year, ArcelorMittal announced a shutdown of its long steel business, leading to massive job cuts. Njongwana says the tariffs will increase the cost of production for companies such as ArcelorMittal.
ArcelorMittal produces steel sheets, steel rods, also for the production of components for vehicles which get exported to the U.S. So the tariffs will naturally increase the cost of production, which will therefore slow down production and therefore reduce the demand for employment, which means that they may have to lay off employment.
The South African Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mantashe, says the impending gas cliff or gas supply crunch is not a certainty. Mantashe, together with other stakeholders in the gas industry, briefed the Portfolio Committee on Mineral and Petroleum Resources on the impending gas cliff. MPs were told by entities involved in gas supply that policy changes are necessary as the country navigates the gas supply crunch, which is expected to hit in the middle of 2028. Mantashe has this response.
This debate over gas cliff remains very fragmented and all over, without any effort to develop a coherent strategy to deal with it. That's my view. I'm expressing a view there. That's why the emphasis will be on gas imports, without looking into our own gas deposits and exploitation thereof.
Questions have been raised about the motives behind the draft Mineral Resources Development Bill open for public comment in South Africa. The draft amendments introduce mechanisms to designate areas for small-scale and artisanal mining, among other changes. Interested parties have until the 13th of August this year to submit written comments. Veteran mining analyst Peter Major has criticized the fact that the bill addresses artisanal mining rights, questioning government's focus on small-scale farm miners. The International Monetary Fund says it views Senegal's plan to enhance tax compliance and cut reliance on external financing as a positive step, but it will have no bearing on the handling of a misreporting case. Senegal, which is engaging with the IMF to find a resolution after misreporting debt and deficit levels, has had a year without any disbursements from the fund after its 1.8 billion program was suspended. Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko says the experience has shown the country can manage its finances and the economy without external help. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 579, Botswana 13 pula 29, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 552, Zambia 26 kwacha 30. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 63, Russia 78 rubles 5, India 85 rupee 85, China 71.18. South Africa $1 is at 17 rand 82 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,368, platinum at $1,094 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $64.72 a barrel. That is all. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peta are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Now, as consumer fatigue with marketing spam grows, traditional channels like call centers, emails, and SMSs are rapidly losing their edge. In South Africa and beyond, businesses are being urged to adapt or fall behind, especially as stricter POPIA regulations demand more responsible and customer-centered engagement. Enter WhatsApp SmartBots, AI-driven tools that are delivering lead retention rates of up to 70%. And that's nearly double that of legacy marketing methods. Now, these bots meet customers where they already are, offer instant responses, and respect their pace and preferences. To unpack this technology that's reshaping modern sales and marketing, we're now joined by Jonathan Alcock, who's the co-founder and CEO of Rather.chat. And that's a company at the forefront of using AI-powered WhatsApp bots to drive smarter, faster customer connections. Jonathan, thanks so much indeed for joining us. So good to have you on the program.
Thanks, Peter. Really, really good to be on the show.
So I'm fascinated by all of this. I mean, I'm only recently got into AI and I'm just still discovering its power. Maybe you can tell us why traditional marketing methods like call centers and email campaigns are no longer delivering the results that they used to.
Peter, I think one of the main reasons is that those channels have very little restrictions and protections of the user in terms of spamming them. So if I want to send you an SMS or an email or give you a call, there's nothing that's preventing me from doing so. It's very different on the WhatsApp platform in that WhatsApp protects the user and allows you to block and report when you are receiving spam. And so most people have flooded inboxes, whether it's on email or SMSs that are never read, and they're just not picking up their phone during the day.
So your company, Rather.chat, uses AI-driven WhatsApp smart bots. What exactly are these bots, and what do they do that traditional systems can't?
I think the main thing is that we incorporate LLM models like ChatGPT that give you a very personalized experience when you're chatting to the chatbot and can deliver near human level engagement with the user. And because they're more intelligent than they used to be, let's say 2 or 3 years ago, you can have quite complex interactions with them, including things like purchasing insurance products, or going on car buying or home buying journeys, as an example.
We're seeing changes in data privacy laws, particularly the implementation of the POPI Act. How are these regulations influencing the way that companies reach out to customers today?
So, as I mentioned earlier with WhatsApp, they're very strict in terms of only contacting users that want to receive the messages. And on one account, that means that if someone finds your data, they are able to send you an SMS. All I need is your number to do so. But WhatsApp will very quickly restrict you in that case. So that's one of the main reasons or protections. So protection on POPI from a spamming perspective. But also from a security perspective, WhatsApp has encryption levels that are very difficult to penetrate. Only you usually have access to your own WhatsApp, versus a lot of the online, when you see online hacks, it's because websites are publicly facing. So anyone across the world, it might be a hacker in Korea or Russia can find the page and look to hack it, whereas with WhatsApp, they're not able to do so because they can't get into that encryption layer. So both protection of information and reduction of spam.
Are there any industries or sectors where smart bots are especially useful, or where the shift to this model has been particularly successful?
Yes, so I think the main areas that we're seeing success are on complex purchases. So when you're purchasing insurance policies, there's a lot of terms and conditions that you need to understand. And the journey isn't as straightforward. And in the past, you would only be able to get sort of top level experience in terms of understanding what you purchase when engaging with a human. But now that AI is brought onto the WhatsApp platform, which is wide reaching, it means that these complex engagements can be automated. And that obviously will reduce the cost of purchasing these products, and allow for much slicker journeys, and that cost gets passed on to consumers. So mainly complex products is sort of the focus areas, but we are in retail as well, and given the improvements in the user experience on WhatsApp, it's becoming a much more graphical interface. Not everyone has engaged with the new UX features. It means that we're going to see a general shift from web pages into WhatsApp, much like has been seen in China with WeChat, where you basically can't be an economically active citizen if you're not on WeChat. I think we're going to see a similar trend over the coming years on the WhatsApp channel. So commerce as general, it's called conversational commerce, is going to be a big theme in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, very exciting. As long as it makes my life easier, I'm all for it. Jonathan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
Thank you. That's Jonathan Alcock, the Chief Executive Officer of Rather.chat, changing lives every day.
zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
nduna wa zamalonda ku Malawi waletsa kampani yopanga shuga ya Ilovo yomwe ndi nthambi ya Ilovo Sugar Group Limited kuti isiye kutumiza shuga ku maiko akunja. malingana ndi nduna ya zamalonda Vitumbuko Mumba, izi zithandiza kuti shuga yemwe yakusowa pa msika azipezeka. ndiye pano ndili ndi George Muhangu amene ali mu mzinda wa Blantyre mu dziko la Malawi. chimene chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndi chani?
chomwe chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndichonena kuti panopo ili ngati off season ya makampani a Ilovo Sugar Malawi, kunena kuti sakutha kupanga shugayi okwanira chifukwa akukolola. ndiye akamaliza kukolola pameneno atayambeno sopano kugaya shugayi kuti azipezeka. chinanso ndichonena kuti ma distributors amene akumaka shuga ku Ilovo kaya ndi kusalima shuga akumagulisa ku maiko akunja ngati Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique.
zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The South African National Blood Service, or SANBS, says less than 1% of the population are blood donors in the country. This is due to the burden of disease in the country that the country is facing, particularly HIV, hepatitis B and hepatitis C, and also due to the fact that people say they are too busy to donate. The organization was addressing the media in Johannesburg, South Africa on Wednesday, ahead of the World Donor Day next Saturday. Sisi Sikhalo has more.
So the transplant itself is quite a traumatic experience because when they transplant, they put you on full life support. So they shut your whole body down, literally put you on life support. You also lose almost all the blood in your body. So literally everything in your body has to be replaced. So that's why when I spoke, I said that without blood, this transplant would not have succeeded because I got blood to the tune of 367,000 rand. That's how much the blood cost.
That was Meena Singh, whose health had deteriorated so much more than a decade ago to a point where she needed a liver transplant. The transplant was possible as a result of blood donation. She's grateful to the donors.
And in March, it was 19 years since I had the transplant. It's given me 19 years to spend with my children. My daughter was 16 when I had my transplant. My son was 10. Today I have a daughter of 35 and a son of 29. And it's given me that time. And like I said, it's not just the liver, it was the blood itself. Also, without blood, that transplant would never have succeeded.
It is residents like Buti Mtombeni that have given people like Meena Singh a lifeline. Mtombeni has been donating for the past 6 years. For him, it took a lot of convincing from the employee of the South African National Blood Service to donate, but it is a decision that he does not regret. He urges others to follow suit.
I think the biggest impact that blood donors have and that they don't realize is that a lot of them think that they will never need blood, primarily because unfortunately, just like a security system, you want people to break in first before you install a security system. A lot of them think that they'll reach a point where they are born to a point where they die, where they don't need blood. A lot of the advertisements that we have and that we see focus more on the numbers of people that donate, the 1% in the entire South African population, but they don't show the dark side of not donating, where now you're sitting in a situation where in any general hospital, any private hospital, if there is no blood, there is no blood. So the message would be, Don't wait for it to happen to somebody that you care about, that they find themselves in a situation where they need blood, for you to actually donate blood and see the impact that it can have. Donate blood as a way of giving back and realizing that someday you might find yourself in a predicament where your life might need to be saved.
Unfortunately, few people in South Africa are blood donors. Reasons vary from eligible age, people saying that donating is not a priority, and some saying they are simply too busy to go and donate. The Chief Executive Officer of the South African National Blood Service, Ravi Reddy, says people need to know that you do not only donate once. You have to be a regular donor in order to avoid shortage of blood. This is his message ahead of World Blood Donor Day next week.
My message is simply to those who are donors, thank you very much. This month and the day globally is to just, take a few moments to reflect from us as the people who collect the blood from the patients, the immense contribution that you as blood donors are making to society, and to say thank you very much. We really appreciate it. For those who play a support role, the media, the drivers, people in the hospitals, the nurses, to also say thank you very much. You are the unsung heroes and heroines as well. Blood on the shelf is going nowhere. We need the infrastructure to do it. And then for those who are not donors, to use this opportunity to say, how can I join the club? How can I become part of that society that is saving lives? In this material world that we live now, I think everyone needs a purpose. The social media, we're looking at this and that. But there's no greater purpose than, as I think you mentioned earlier, giving something of yourself to someone you don't know.
That report on the South African National Blood Service calling for people to come forward and donate blood by our reporter, Sisi Sekhalu. 8 o'clock it is now, Central African time. Good morning to the third and final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, at Channel Africa 1 is where you can find us for your questions and views on our social media platforms. I'm Asanda Beta.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. This is an internet-based channel. www.channelafrica.co.za is where you can find us. Go and spread the gospel. So much to look forward to in this half hour, but we'll tell you a bit more about that after the news with Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter.
Channel Africa and you
head to the polls today for the country's first legislative elections since 2020. For the first time, these elections will be held separately from presidential elections slated for the year 2027. The Burundian constitution, which was revised in 2018, now includes a change in the length of the presidential term from 5 to 7 years. This is a key test for President Evariste Ndayishimiye, whose ruling party, the CNDD-FDD party, has dominated the political scene for nearly 2 decades. The Tanzanian government says it has blocked access to the social media platform X due to what it calls pornographic content. The shutdown comes amid criticism of a crackdown on the opposition ahead of the October election. 2 weeks ago, several government-linked accounts were hacked. The police account was compromised with sexually explicit material and false information that the president had died. The economic freedom fighter leader Julius Malema says the concept of black unity amongst black political parties in South Africa cannot only be directed to the EFF. Malema's comments come as the African Congress for Transformation, led by Ace Magashule, called for black unity amongst political parties, including the Umkhonto weSizwe party. Malema says those calling for black unity should have joined the EFF instead of forming other parties. He was speaking to the media in Pretoria after paying his respect to the family of Tsotsi actor and River star Presley Chwenyagai.
I've got a problem. Why is this unity of black parties only directed at EFF? They never complain that the ANC doesn't want to unite with them. They never complain that PA doesn't want to unite with them. every time EFF. We are not going to allow that. You can see it's not black unity. This is an agenda to destroy the EFF. Because why are they not giving you a report about black unity with UTM? Why are they not giving you a report about all these many black formations that are there?
The KwaZulu-Natal Province Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi says enforcing the law against undocumented immigrants continues to be a challenge for police in South Africa. Mkhwanazi says it is hard to prosecute undocumented foreigners, says they always claim to have applied for asylum at the Home Affairs Department and are awaiting approval. He has acknowledged that there is a huge public outcry regarding criminal activities that are linked to illegal immigrants. Lastly, nearly 1.5 million Muslim pilgrims will today perform the most important ritual of the Hajj pilgrimage, ascending Mount Arafat. The area of southeast of Mecca is where the crowds are most exposed to the summer heat. The BBC's Yusuf Taha explains.
With temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius, Saudi officials say they have stepped up safety precautions, planted thousands of trees and installed hundreds of cooling units and water sprinklers. The Hajj minister also said that shaded areas had been increased by 50,000 square meters. Extreme heat killed nearly 1,300 people last year. Most were unregistered and therefore unable to access air-conditioned amenities. With security tighter than ever, officials are using CCTV and drones to monitor proceedings. They say they have stopped more than 250,000 unregistered people from entering Mecca this year.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, a deadly stampede at an India cricket celebration leaves 11 people dead, while Bafana Bafana lose to Mozambique in their first match of the COSAFA Cup in the Free State Province. Details coming up at 8:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
5 minutes past 8. I think let's take a moment to thank the team. I forgot to do that today. On production is Hlengiwe Mabaso, Joey Likhodi, and Pumuzo Ramakadza. On news is Onele Nzinzi. On economics news, Chanduko Ligege. On sports news, Musibudi Makura. Social media is by Talent Butelezi, and our technical producer today, Dando Lutuli. That's the team that puts all things together for Rise and Shine, besides these two faces you see there on the live streaming. So the feud between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, a decades-long conflict that has blocked collaboration between the neighbors, is the story we look at now. We ask, what would it take to bring peace between Rwanda and the DRC, giving context to the history that plunged the African Great Lakes region into turmoil? We speak to Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza, a Rwandan politician who in 2010 returned to Rwanda from exile in the Netherlands to run as a presidential candidate. She was, however, arrested and sentenced to 15 years in prison and later released after 8 years of incarceration in 2018, thanks to a presidential grace. Victoire, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Rise and Shine. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I am okay, thank you.
Thanks for making time. We appreciate it. The struggle to establish collaborative relations for the benefit of the people continues in the DRC and Rwanda more than 3 decades now. It is after the Tutsi genocide. Could you have imagined that it would take this long and still not be resolved in 2025? Let's start there.
For I take this opportunity to calm down this unjust war that has been going on more than 3 decades in Eastern DRC. My dear sisters and brothers of DRC, I hold on to the hope that one day we will live in peace and harmony. The time will come down, we will support each other to heal our wounds. the sisters and brothers there, so they have to understand that the war is not between Rwandans and the Congolese population, but the problem is between the leaders we have in our region.
If there's,
we talk about, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Go on, Victoire.
Go. Mm-hmm. There are many people think that this conflict is the problem, the competition for natural resource, but really the root cause of this war is the lack of good governance, lack of democracy, lack of respect of human rights, as well as social and economic exclusion that have created the exodus of refugees from Rwanda to DRC or vice versa. And I think today, to resolve this problem, people have to understand that to sign a deal, bilateral deal only regarding the natural resource will not resolve the problem. We need to resolve, first of all, the internal political issue of Rwanda, because the problem comes from Rwanda. It is hard to say, but it is true.
And that's the thing. There's the issue of financing or supporting the conflict, and then also the issue of the fundamental cause of the conflict, which you speak of, and that is what you think should be tackled first in dismantling security concerns. But how do we do that? You mentioned issues of internal political conflicts. You talk about good governance being an issue. How do we make sure that the fundamental cause of the conflict is tackled first before we can even say who's supporting the conflict?
What needed to be done is to organize dialogue between the key actors in Rwanda and also in DRC. We have to know that since the genocide committed against the Tutsi in Rwanda in 1994, we have more refugees in the neighboring country like DRC, but also in Burundi, in Uganda. And these groups forms the political organization, and the some of them that support the army groups FDR. So today I say the only solution we have is not we use weapons, because we know that many times the Rwanda army, in a collaboration with the Congolese army, they attacked the AFDR, but they did not resolve the problem. The only solution we have is dialogue between the Rwanda oppositions and the Congolese opposition, and both governments have to dialogue with the opposition as respective the refugees, to agree how to resolve how to achieve the good governance based on political inclusivity, and that which can give us a reform of governance that can guarantee the return, voluntary and the definite return of refugees in our country.
Security concerns, as you say, have been there for so long that one would even classify them as what's to be expected when it comes to the DRC and Rwanda. Do the people of Rwanda and DRC see things as that it's become normalized now, or they still have hope?
So we still have hope. The only problem we see today is that the U.S. trying to have a deal between both governments. I agree that we can achieve this. We can achieve stability by signing this deal, because the U.S. is a strong partnership between both countries. But we have to recall that before the resume of the war between Rwanda and DRC, there was also this kind of deal between both two companies in the DRC. There was the Sakima. There was a protocol. There was a cooperation protocol between the gold company Sakima on the side of Congo, and on the side of Rwanda, there was a company detail. So the deal to process the gold in Rwanda existed. This means that there is another problem that should be resolved, that the U.S. today has not only to concentrate on bilateral relation regarding only the natural resource, they have also to understand that we need a good governance in both countries.
We'll talk about the sanctions against even that gold industry there in a bit. But there was a change also in government, as well as the dismantling of Hutu refugee camps in Rwanda when Laurent Kabila came into power. Why did this move not result in meaningful change to security concerns between the DRC and Rwanda in the way you see it?
Because, as I said, they remain refugees in different countries in the world, not only in DRC, but also in the different parts of the world, in America, in Europe. And these groups are political groups that need to come back in the country in dignity and to be sure that they will exercise the political right. And many times they take example to myself. When I come back voluntarily in 2010, I was arrested and I spent 8 years in prison. So the refugees who are outside country, they are afraid to come back because they think that maybe they will be arrested like me. So the Rwanda has to open up a political space to guarantee the security to the people, to Rwanda's people who want to exercise their political rights.
Do you think those Rwandan and DRC refugees can be convinced that those pivotal points of good governance, of democracy and respect for human rights in making it attractive for both the neighbors and the refugees from both neighboring countries to want to return? As you mentioned, some are in other places, not just in Rwanda and DRC, some are in other countries, these refugees.
Yes, of course. And you have to record that there was a tension between Rwanda and Burundi and Uganda over the allegation that those two countries support the Rwanda refugees who seek to overthrow the Rwanda government by force. So this is why we say the problem is not only between DRC and Rwanda. It is a global problem regarding refugees that the international partnership of Rwanda, of DRC, wanted to stabilize the region, who wanted to help the people in our region to achieve lasting peace. They have to understand that they have to resolve really this issue of refugees. And the refugees, we have refugees in many countries and different countries in the region because of lack of good governance.
If you've just tuned in on Africa Rise and Shine, our time is 15 minutes past 6 Central African, and we're in conversation with Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza, a Rwandan politician who in 2010 returned to Rwanda from exile in the Netherlands. Our conflict resolution between the Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo being our topic of discussion. Victoire, if we say that the issue should be tackled from a point where the voices of the voiceless need to be included. If we're talking about a Rwanda DRC peace deal, first of all, who would the voiceless be, in your view, when it comes to this conflict, and how do we include them?
Yes, those voiceless are political who are excluded in the politics in their country. Like here in Rwanda, I am in Rwanda, I have a political party, and my political party is not yet registered. We have many political organizations outside the Rwanda or civil organizations who are outside the Rwanda who cannot exercise their right in Rwanda because the political space is not open in our country. So those are voiceless. They are refugees. For example, we saw the last time that many refugees are forced to come back in Rwanda. And we know that according to the International Convention of Refugees, there is no possibility to send back the refugees if they don't want to go back in their original countries. So, but the last time we saw many Rwandans, we left Rwanda because of the economic problem. And now they are sending them back But in Rwanda, they sold what they have in Rwanda to buy the ground in the DRC, to establish itself in the DRC, and today they are sent back in Rwanda, where they will find how they will live in Rwanda. That is why I say they are voiceless, that someone have to talk in their place and to say that they have right. Their right have to be respected by both sides who are in the war in DRC.
Let's take a shift a bit from the fundamental causes of the conflict to the support or financing of the conflict. The UN has reported that Rwanda, since 2012, has been receiving support or has been supporting, rather, the M23 rebels. So the M23 rebels have been receiving support from Rwanda, who are at war with the DRC government. Do you think sanctions imposed by Rwanda's partners on the country and its officials, you also mentioned the gold industry, was that the best response in hindsight?
Sanctions can only temporarily be the solution, but it is not the solution for lasting peace in our region. Recall that in 2012, the international community took sanctions against Rwanda, and of course the war stopped. But 10 years later, the resumption of the M23, we saw it until today. So that means that the sanction is not really the solution. The solution is to find a solution to the root cause of the problem. And the root cause is not the mineral, because the mineral is one of drives to the conflict, but it's not really the root cause of the conflict. The root cause, as I said many times, is the lack of good governance and the lack of the democracy, the lack of the justice, and the impunity, for example, is one source of instability in the Great Lakes region, because many times the crimes committed are not punished. According to Amnesty International, impunity of human rights abuse and violation, including war crime against humanity, has troubled the region, and the perpetrators are until today not punished.
There are opportunities in lucrative regional supply chains and bilateral trade at stake here. I think you touched on the bilateral trade part. But how can the competition for natural resources be controlled, managed, or as part of what's needed to make a peace deal long-lasting?
We have a democratized governments in different countries in the region. Of course, there will be a good management of the resource. For example, I think if a democratic Rwanda will be a reliable ally to the international community and a credible partner in the responsible supply chain of regional natural resources.
Let's talk about political opposition as part of those we refer to as the part of the group of the voiceless. How can political inclusiveness be achieved both within and outside of the borders between the two countries if we focus on this group of opposition parties as part of those we call the voiceless? Your party included, the Development and Liberty for All Party, or Dalfa Umurinzi.
Yes, all opposition should be included in the to find the solution of this problem, because they are part of the problem. As I said, for example, Rwanda gives as an argument the problem of M23, the refugees, the Congolese refugees who are in Rwanda, that Rwanda said they have to go back to enjoy the liberty in their country, in DRC. But the same should be done also, because we have also Rwanda government to talk about Congolese refugees, but we have also Rwandans refugees in DRC, in Burundi, in Uganda, and also in the Western countries. So that means that these refugees who are in opposition or who are refugees, they have to be involved in finding the solution of the stability in the Great Lakes region. This is why I write this article to Al Jazeera, and I send also letters to the Trump administration asking them don't forget to include the opposition, Rwanda's opposition, Congolese opposition, and Congolese refugees, Rwanda's refugees in the deal, because they are a part of the problem in the instability, and they are at the same time the solution for stability and lasting peace in the Great Lakes region.
The U.S. And the current peace deal that is proposing or bringing forward, that is seen a lot of times to be related more to trade, more than, issues of human rights, but they could be also part of that. But is the U.S., in your view, the power here to be able to tackle an issue such as freedom of expression? You were in jail for 8 years for politically motivated judicial proceedings, it was found to be. As it comes to freedom of expression in Rwanda, can the U.S. be a powerful force in exerting pressure and changing the status quo?
Because they can't do it, because they have to understand that the deal that the U.S. is currently attempting to broker between Rwanda and DRC will not resolve the problem of insecurity if they don't take in consideration the lack of democracy and the lack of respect of human rights, the lack of rule of law in Rwanda. Because, as I said, the problems come at Rwanda, and the solution should be first found in Rwanda. The internal political issue of Rwanda, if it is not resolved, it will not possible to find lasting peace in the Great Lakes region.
Let's get a bit of your own personal experience, because you left Rwanda, and I want to touch on the issue of refugees and whether or not they can be convinced to come back into the country, or also the DRC refugees. You left Rwanda, went to the Netherlands in exile. As you were returning in 2010, I'm sure you were wondering whether or not you will be able to have a full life and be able to create that proper life for yourself back home, including when it comes to things of employment and access to that and human rights. If we talk about the reintegration of refugees to their respective countries, take us through what you were going through and what convinced you to want to return back home to Rwanda.
When I come back in Rwanda, I hoped to participate in the reconstruction of our country. But I was surprised when the government did not listen to my argument. I don't say that I was right on everything, but the government has to listen to the Rwanda's people, the ordinary citizen, to see how we can resolve the problems we have inside our country. And when they come back, they hoped to participate in the reconstruction, but they put me in the prison. And some colleagues of me in Rwanda, some are in prison today. 14 members of my political party are in prison today. 4 members are assassinated, and the 4 others are kidnapped. And until today, we don't know what will happen to them. So this is the kind that make fear to the refugees, the Rwanda refugees who are outside, to come back in Rwanda. But they want to come in the back and to participate in the reconstruction of our country.
And it's a big number of people that can make a big difference. And just in Rwanda alone, it's 200,000. And in the Congolese side, 83,000. We haven't even, that's according to the figures by the UNHCR, we haven't even tallied those who are not in Rwanda and Congo. So I guess that is a way of saying let's plant a seed, and we'll see what that results into in the coming months as we continue. And hopefully not years, but maybe years, as we continue to have this conversation. You founded your political party, the Development and Liberty for All, or DALFA, Umurinzi. What are your objectives through this party for the people of Rwanda, as you sit here with us talking as well with the media? Tell us about this party.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Your objectives through your political party.
Can you repeat?
Your objectives through your political party that you founded, the Development and Liberty of All, or DALFA Umurinzi. What are you hoping to achieve through it for the people of Rwanda? And also just letting us know, as the media chatting with you, what this party can offer that brings a difference to security concerns there.
Yes, when I created the Darfa Umurinzi, the objective was to democratize Rwanda because we need to establish a strong institution. And if you take a look in the history of Rwanda, you see that every time we needed to change the leaders in Rwanda was always by violence. And they say, we knew the genocide committed against the Tutsi in 1994. And they say we have really to change the way political is done in Rwanda. We have to establish strong institutions that can guarantee the security to every Rwandans and that can really offer the development to all. And that is the second point is development for all, because we need to develop our countries, not only the cities or the area where we see the tourists, but we have also to think about the rural area, to develop a rural area in our country. We have to invest more in the project that can respond to immediate need to our people, like the agriculture, infrastructure, and education, for example. And the other point is to achieve the lasting consolidation of social, because after the genocide, there is the problem between Rwandans. There are no trust between Rwandans. So to achieve the effective reconciliation, we need to harmonize our history, to recognize our victims, and then to build together Rwandans. And the other policy is to decentralization of the power, because we don't need to have our decision from both, but we need also bottom decision that the Rwandans people, ordinary citizens, participate in the policy of the countries. And the last point is the positive diplomacy with the other countries, especially the neighboring countries. I think that Rwanda has to sign peace treaties with neighboring countries because Rwanda is small and the landlocked countries. We have to build a good relationship with our neighboring country that we can make business without hindrance.
How far along until registration is completed now for Dalfa Umurinzi?
I created this party in November 2018. Until today, the government refused to register it. And it is not to understand, because if you want to register a company, a commercial company in Rwanda, it takes only 24 hours. But in a political party, it takes many years.
Right. Well, continue with that, and we hope you don't tire from making sure that Dalfa Umurinzi is officially recognized on the electoral toll and ballots and is a position in the country. We thank you again for your time, Victoire. We salute your strength, and again, thanks for making time for us on Africa Rise and Shine.
Thank you too.
Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza is a Rwandan politician who in 2010 returned to Rwanda from exile in the Netherlands. She's founder of the political party The Development and Liberty for All, or Dalfa Umurinzi. 8:31 Central African Time. Good morning, Onele Nzinzi. She's got our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The United Nations Rights Office has called for an independent investigation into the discovery of mass graves at detention centers in Libya's capital, Tripoli. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said it was shocked by the gross human rights violations uncovered at official and unofficial detention facilities. The Tanzanian government says it has blocked access to the social media platform X due to what it calls pornographic content. The shutdown comes amid criticism of a crackdown on the opposition ahead of October elections. And the U.S. has been criticized for vetoing a UN Security Council draft resolution demanding an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time to take a look at sport now. Here's Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning once again from the sports desk. Now Mozambique were the biggest winners on day one of the COSAFA Cup tournament as they defeated the host nation South Africa, while Mauritius held Zimbabwe to a goalless draw at the Toyota Stadium on Wednesday in South Africa's Free State province. Now Mozambique put in a superb second half display as they defeated the host side 1-0 thanks to the winner by Antonio Sumbani. Now Sumbani turned the ball into the net at the back post after South Africa failed to clear a delivery across the 6-yard box, earning his side a precious 3 points and a top spot after round one in Group A. So Mozambique also had a goal disallowed for offside in the first half, while South Africa missed several chances to earn at least a point from that game. The video assistant referee had also introduced from game one of this year's tournament for the very first time in the history of the competition, and the first time on the African continent of a regional tournament. Meanwhile, in the other game, Mauritius holding Zimbabwe to a goalless draw in the second game of the day and might also count themselves unfortunate after VAR ruled out a goal for handball. Mauritius put in an excellent display, but they have surprised the 6-time champions Zimbabwe and were good value for their point in yesterday's game, meaning of course that they will remain in second position in the group following that goalless draw against Zimbabwe. Cristiano Ronaldo scored his 137th international goal for Portugal after they came from a goal down to beat Germany and reach the Nations League final. The 40-year-old tapped in Nuno Mendes' low pass in the 68th minute for what proved to be the winner and also set up a final with either France or Spain. Ronaldo's effort came just 5 minutes after Francesco Conceição had cancelled out a 48-minute Florian Ritz opener for the host side. Portugal won the first tournament back in 2019, but their hopes of a second success look slim when they fell behind in Munich. Now France as well as Spain play in the second game later on tonight in Stuttgart, with the final set for Munich on Sunday. The match had been delayed by more than 10 minutes because of hailstorms in Munich as the Allianz Arena hosted its second major game of the week after the Champions League final on Saturday when Paris Saint-Germain defeated Inter Milan by 5-1. On to some cricket news now. Packed grounds in India crowds celebrating their cricket team's victory ended in a deadly stampede on Wednesday, with 11 mainly young fans crashing to death. The local state's chief minister having confirmed the news on Wednesday. Now, joyous cricket fans had come out in their numbers to celebrate as well as welcome home the heroes, the Royal Challengers Bengaluru, after they defeated the Punjab Kings in a roller coaster Indian Premier League cricket final on Tuesday night. But the euphoria of the vast crowds in the southern tech city of Bengaluru ended in disaster, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi also calling it an absolutely heartbreaking situation. So 11 people died, including youngsters, 47 injured in that stampede. Novak Djokovic continued his quest for a standalone record 25th Grand Slam title by defeating third seed Alexander Zverev to reach the French Open semi-finals. The 38-year-old sixth seed won 4-6, 6-3, 6-2 and 6-4 to set up a meeting with world number one Jannik Sinner on Friday. Djokovic, who had 3 Roland Garros titles coming into this tournament, lost the opening set to the 2024 runner-up after being broken in the first game of the match, but the Serbian Namibian great did not drop a serve again, and although had to survive a 41-shot exchange on the break point at 3-2 in the fourth set on his way to sealing a record-extending 51st Grand Slam semi-final appearance at Roland Garros.
It was an amazing match. Obviously, beating one of the best players in the world on the biggest stage is something that I definitely work for, and I still push myself on a daily basis at this age to keep going because of these kind of matches, because of this kind of experiences, and it's a proof and kind of testament to myself that I can, and to others that I can still play on the highest level, and.
Meanwhile, the world number 361, Louise Bosson, says she's not satisfied with defying the odds to reach the semi-finals of the French Open and wants now to fulfill a childhood dream by winning her home Grand Slam tournament. Now, the French woman who entered Roland Garros draw as a wild card ensured her fairy tale run would continue following a 7-6, 6-3 triumph over 6-seed Mira Andreeva last night. The French woman had now beaten 3 seeded players en route to the last 4, she will meet the world number 1 Coco Gauff for a place in the final of this competition. This is what she had to say after yesterday's win.
I really enjoy everything that I live here on the court and outside the court, so I will see this after. For now, I just have to prepare the match of tomorrow. I just proud of myself because was really tough for me to go into the semi-final. Every match was really tough, so I'm just proud about how it ends every time, just like I finish the match.
Right, so that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Annika Longi sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons danser au son de Haya que je dédicace à vous tous, chers auditeurs qui sont en train de suivre cette émission Mix Vibration. N'oubliez pas, vous pouvez nous suivre à partir de l'application SABC+. Vous choisissez Channel Africa pour suivre l'émission en direct. Nous allons danser au son de Haya.
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of business. Here's Chandugo Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Ghana's artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector is expanding rapidly, mostly outside legal oversight. This growth is driven by limited job opportunities and the promise of quick income, but is increasingly linked to environmental distractions, foreign involvement, and organized criminal networks. A new report based on 3 years of research and satellite analysis has revealed how unlicensed mining is intensifying in regions like Western and Savannah and why enforcement efforts remain weak. Director of Extractives at the Global Initiative Against Transactional Organized Crime, Masena Hunter, made this comment.
I think one of the first big observations is the uptake of new technology and equipment. We're seeing a lot of advancement, and a lot of that has been introduced by foreign nationals. And so seeing, for example, the shift from just using mercury processing to using cyanide leaching, which is a lot more profitable and generates a lot more high qualities and quantities of gold.
Ghana's consumer inflation slowed in May for the 5th month in a row to its lowest level since February 2022 as inflationary pressures ease across the board in the West African state. Government statistician Al-Hassan Idrisu told a news conference that consumer inflation eased to 18.4% year-on-year in May from 21.2% a month earlier, adding that this inflation was expected to continue in the coming months. Idrisu says the inflation trend being witnessed by the country shows sustained deceleration, adding that food remains a key inflation driver. But the sharper drop in non-food inflation suggests a broad-based easing of inflation across the economy. In other news, South African steel manufacturing company ArcelorMittal stands to suffer financial losses should the U.S. impose 50% tariffs on aluminium imports. This according to trade analyst Viwen Jongwana, who weighed in on the recent development from the White House, which has raised concern among steel producers outside the U.S. Earlier during the year, ArcelorMittal announced a shutdown of its long steel business, leading to massive job cuts. Jongwana says the tariffs will increase the cost of production for companies such as ArcelorMittal.
ArcelorMittal produces steel sheets, steel rods, also for the production of components for vehicles which get exported to the U.S. So the tariffs will naturally increase the cost of production, which will therefore slow down production and therefore reduce the demand for employment, which means that they may have to lay off employment.
The South African Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mantashe, says the impending gas cliff or gas supply crunch is not a certainty. Mantashe, together with other stakeholders in the gas industry, briefed the Portfolio Committee on Mineral and Petroleum Resources on the impending gas cliff. MPs were told by entities involved in gas supply that policy changes are necessary as the country navigates the gas supply crunch, which is expected to hit in the middle of 2028. Mantashe has this response.
This debate of a gas cliff remains very fragmented and all over, without any effort to develop a coherent strategy to deal with it. That's my view. I'm expressing a view here. That's why the emphasis will be on gas imports without looking into our own gas deposits and exploitation thereof.
The International Monetary Fund says it views Senegal's plan to enhance tax compliance and cut reliance on external financing as a positive step, but it will have no bearing on the handling of a misreporting case. Senegal wishes engaging with the IMF to find a resolution after misreporting debt and deficit levels has had a year without any disbursements from the fund after its 1.8 billion program was suspended. Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko says the experience has shown the country can manage its finances and the economy without external help. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 579, Botswana 13 pula 29, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 552, Zambia 26 kwacha 30. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 63, Russia 78 rubles 95, India 85 rupees 85, China 71.18, South Africa 17 rand 82. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,368, platinum at $1,094 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $64.72 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
As South Africa observes Child Protection Week this week, Save the Children South Africa says it feels compelled to address the horrific surge in ritual and multi-murders of children across the country. The child rights group says the recent cases of Jocelyn Smith, Kutlwano Shalaba and Liko Nafosa have sent shockwaves throughout the southern African nation, exposing the dark underbelly of a culture that sacrifices its most vulnerable members in the name of harmful traditional beliefs and superstitions. Tuto Ngobeni has the story.
Save the Children South Africa SCSA says the ritual killings of children are a gruesome reminder of the systematic failures that have left children in the country exposed to the most heinous forms of violence as the country observes Child Protection Week. These cases expose a disturbing reality in which harmful cultural beliefs continue unchecked while child protection systems remain grossly inadequate, leaving children vulnerable to abduction, trafficking, and ritual-related violence. Chief Executive Officer at SCSA, Gugu Xaba, says the increase of such cases is evidence that children are under threat in the country.
Save the Children South Africa believes that we have seen the increase in the tolerance of violence by adults in South Africa, such that it has even transmitted to tolerance of violence by children themselves. So that tells you that we have a society that is recorded to be violent, but we are also seeing the results. And these results are seen in the fact that at times when some people observe violence occurring, they don't see it as the need to report, because just observing violence, according to the Children's Act, is an offense. And then when violence has actually occurred, or for instance, at times you observe that there's a likelihood of violence, or you observe the violence occurring, at times adults don't do anything about it. That tells you that children are under threat.
Ritual and muti-related murders in South Africa disproportionately affect children who are particularly vulnerable due to their perceived spiritual purity and defenselessness, making them prime targets for perpetrators. The motivation behind these brutal acts is often rooted in misguided beliefs where human body parts are believed to enhance traditional medicines or rituals aimed at achieving material gains such as success, fertility, protection, or longevity. Xaba says the best way to stop these killings is by ensuring that the country's justice system is effective.
Clearly, as you know, Save the Children South Africa is responsible for ensuring that we promote and we ensure that the rights of children and their families are taken care of. Now, we would have a suggestion in this case that the safety and security systems, the policing systems must improve. It must be of good quality for us to be able to catch the ritual killers and make sure that they are prosecuted properly, and we can then be able to reduce the occurrence of any other ritual killing.
That report by Tuto Ngobeni.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa is ramping up its innovation drive. This week, the Gauteng province broke ground on a $4.7 million addition to the Innovation Hub in Pretoria. It's part of a $140 million master plan to grow the province's science and tech precinct, backed by government. Now, Absa Bank and private investors, with the Water Research Commission as anchor tenant, the project is set to boost job creation, research and green innovation. And joining us to unpack this a little bit more and what it means for Gauteng's innovation economy is Bongani Mpangalasane, who's the CEO of the Innovation Hub Management Company. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Peter, and thank you very much for an opportunity, and good morning to the listeners today.
I can honestly say that it was a joy for me back in the day when the Innovation Hub was launched. I was the MC that day, and there was so much excitement about what this hub was going to do. How has it been over the years?
Peter, we will be celebrating 25 years of existence in the coming year, and hopefully you will still come back and be part of the occasion. The Innovation Hub has developed, created a lot of jobs. We have added as a catalyst. We have done so much exports. We took startups, SMEs from an idea, product development, IP registrations, all regulatory affairs to commercialization to export. So we have moved as an organization, and through the different challenges that we have as a province and the country, we are now realigning ourselves to respond directly to societal challenges, also ensuring that we add as a catalyst to economic development.
So what will this $4.7 million building, Enterprise Building 3, mean? What does this represent for you and for Gauteng's innovation landscape?
The provincial government, as maybe I can just give it just a brief background, so there is a context on why are we here today. The Innovation Hub is an entity that was established by the provincial government of Gauteng, which is the subsidiary of the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. Our mandate, we are tasked to be a catalyst of innovation and economic development, but equally to use innovation to resolve current challenges that we are facing as a society. The provincial government pronouncements and the strategic intention of ensuring that there is economic growth with the investment conference that has happened, that we have seen quite a number of companies interested to actually partner with provincial government. This partnership with the private sector is important because it then allows the public sector to focus on resolving critical issues and directing fiscal to that. So if we partner with private partners, then we at some point leverage with what they have, and they also leverage with the capacity that we have. It is a strategic intention, and it is a strategic movement that the provincial government has taken. And Innovation Hub is quite important because we are bringing on board partners that have got national and international relationships in terms of the innovation. The Water Research Commission is strategic. We were a crisis of water in the country, and having them at the Innovation Hub, we can then leverage on each other's strength, and we can work together well to ensure that on that specific issue, we are able to collaborate and resolve this issue that is faced by the country.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you so much indeed, and very exciting to see that this Innovation Hub continues to grow from strength to strength and changing the face of technology in the province. Thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Peter, for the opportunity. Hopefully, we will engage again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's Bongani Mpangalasane, who's the CEO of the Innovation Hub in Pretoria, and they're just adding a $4.7 million building to a project that's worth well over $140 million master plan. Okay. Quite a few things that we need to look at the minute.
So, the Channel Africa Conversations podcast is coming today, the new episode. Who did you speak to this week, Peter?
This week we spoke to Marie-Antoinette Rose Catra, who's the CEO of the what do they call it? African Peer Review Mechanism. Finally got there. And we had a conversation about the APRM, what it does, and what it's been able to do, because it's been running about 21 years. And this is what she told us.
The APRM is a voluntary mechanism
And there's a strength and a beauty in it because it's member states who voluntarily accept to be reviewed, and they make the request to the APRM. We conduct the reviews. We have different types of reviews. We have what we call the base review, which targets 6 different thematic areas: political governance, economic governance, socio-economic development, corporate governance. After COVID, we introduce resilience to external shocks. As you know, there are different types of external shocks, economic shocks. We can have a pandemic, you can have climate change shocks. So resilience to external shocks was added. And this year, we've also added e-governance. As you know, the e-space is becoming an emerging challenge and opportunity as well in the age of AI. So we felt we needed to also introduce e-governance.
All right, that's Marie-Antoinette Rose Quatre, the CEO of the APRM, in conversation with us in Channel Africa Conversations. Look out for this week's conversation on YouTube.
What to look out for right now as well is On the Move, which comes after Africa Rise and Shine with Benjamin Mushatama and Palisa Tau. Benji joins us to tell us what to expect today. How are you?
Today I'm Benji. I like that. It's better than Benjamin Mushatama.
I've been trying to figure alternatives. What do I say now?
Yeah, keep it up.
To make it sound chill.
Benji's all right. Benji's all right. All right, we're going to be looking at Men's Health Month. Is it Men's Mental Health Month? I don't even know what it is, even when I'm a man. You know, I'm trying to make a point here because when you think about mental health, us men, I don't think we even get into those conversations, right? We don't even know what month it is for us because it's just like we are very indifferent.
Yeah, and you know the sad thing about it is that men commit suicide much more than women. So mental health is a big thing for us. But as you say, we don't get it dealt with. We don't deal with those issues. So you're right. There's something about men and dealing with mental issues, mental health issues, that really needs to be addressed.
Yeah, so it's Men's Mental Health Month. So with all the stuff of us putting that on the back burner, what do we do to centralize it? Because clearly we don't really care because there's so much pressures on us. That's the thing. They say take care of yourselves, and then there's still these pressures that we still have to deal with. Hashtag, you know.
You can't cry. It's some of the things that we taught from day one.
Sure.
And it's that lack of crying and emotional output that I think catches up with us eventually.
Do you cry, Peter?
Do you know,
I don't say you're crying, Peter.
I cry watching movies, actually. It's bizarre.
Okay, that's cool.
It's weird.
But I don't see you crying under pressure. Like, life is so tough.
Because in Damas.
All right, that's what's coming up.
Thank you so much. So that's to look forward to, and stay tuned on Channel Africa. From us, the Rise and Shine duo, it's goodbye. I'm Asanda Peta.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. And the news is next with Onele and Sinsi. Have a good day.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Looking at your top stories, the UN to investigate findings of mass graves at Libya's detention centers, and the US criticized for vetoing a UN Security Council draft resolution. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. The United Nations Rights Office has called for an independent investigation into the discovery of mass graves at detention centers in Libya's capital, Tripoli. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said it was shocked by gross human rights violations uncovered at official and unofficial detention facilities run by the Stability Support Apparatus. The security institution was established to uphold the rule of law and falls under the Presidential Council that came to power in 2021 with the Government of National Unity of Abdulrahim Debeiba through a UN-backed process. The spokesperson for the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Jeremy Lawrence, explains.
We are shocked by revelations of gross human rights violations uncovered at official and unofficial detention facilities run by the Stabilisation Support Apparatus force in the Libyan capital of Tripoli. Dozens of bodies have been found, along with the discovery of suspected instruments of torture and abuse and potential evidence of extrajudicial killings. This confirms the long-standing findings by the UN as well as from various witness accounts. These sites must be sealed and all potential evidence preserved in support of immediate accountability efforts.
Burundians head to the polls today for the country's first legislative election since 2020. For the first time, these elections will be held separately from presidential elections that are slated for the year 2027. The Burundian constitution, which was revised in 2018, now includes a change in the length of the presidential term from 5 to 7 years. This is a key test for President Evariste Ndayishimiye, whose ruling party, the CNDD-FDD, has dominated the political scene for nearly 2 decades. The Tanzanian government says it has blocked access to the social media platform X due to what it calls pornographic content. The shutdown comes amid criticism of a crackdown on the opposition ahead of the October elections. 2 weeks ago, several government-linked accounts were hacked. The police accounts were compromised with sexual explicit material and false information that the president had died. The U.S. has been criticized for vetoing a UN Security Council draft resolution demanding an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The other 14 members voted in favor of the document, which also demanded the release of all hostages and the lifting of humanitarian aid restrictions. Pakistan's ambassador to the UN, Asim Iftikhar Ahmad, described the vote as a moral stain.
It will be remembered as a complicity, a green light for continued annihilation, a moment where the entire world was expecting action, but yet again this council was blocked and prevented by one member from carrying out its responsibility.
Now this week on Channel Africa Conversations podcast with Peter Ndoro, he speaks to the CEO of the AU's Africa Peer Review Mechanism, APRM Ambassador Marie-Antoinette Rose Quatre, who says the work of the body becomes easy when there is political will and governments are willing to be scrutinized.
The member states themselves ask to be reviewed. So in the first instance, there's political will. And when there's political will, we have found that the review process is much more smoother and much more efficient. Over and above engaging with member states, we engage with different stakeholders. And this is a requirement of the review. We do not only question and have specific interventions for member states, but also the private sector, the civil society organizations. We pay particular attention to women and youths and other minority groups.
Now, for the full version of this conversation, be sure to catch the latest episode of Channel Africa Conversations podcast on our YouTube channel at Channel Africa 1. Now, recapping on your top stories, the United Nations Rights Office has called for an independent investigation into the discovery of mass graves at detention centers in Libya's capital, Tripoli. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said it was shocked by the gross human rights violations that were uncovered at official and unofficial detention facilities that are run by the stability support apparatus. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Mtsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Hey, it's another day, and it is time for On the Move right here on Channel Africa. Thanks to the morning team, thanks to our news team, thanks to Peter and Asanda, making sure that we are in the know what's happening here on the African continent. This is Channel Africa, where you get news, information, entertainment from an African perspective. That's the perspective we never really hear often, even if we are on the African continent. Have you ever switched on your telly and you're like, no man, where are the voices of my people? I can't see them even on these things that I'm watching everywhere. Where are my people? That's what we're trying to reverse here on Channel Africa, where we, the Africans, are speaking on our own behalf. And that's an agenda that we really do not shy away from and that we take very, very seriously. Welcome on the show. You with me, Benjamin Mushatama. I'm running solo today. As you could have heard yesterday on our show, Palisa was not doing very well. She is got the flu, and there's a flu that's going around in Johannesburg. It's been going around for the last 2 months. It's actually unavoidable. So she's taking a bit of a break today, and I even told her yesterday that, look, just relax, just take it easy and take a break. So it's great that she is doing that. Well, today we're going to be looking at something that is important. June is Men's Health Month. They also say June is the men's, seems like everything that is men has to happen in June. So that's what we're going to be starting the conversation with. It is an annual campaign that is